Hey everyone, tonight we're diving deep. We're going underground, far beneath the forested hills of Transylvania, into a world carved not by nature, but by human hands. We're exploring the ancient salt mines, vast subterranean cathedrals of industry where miners, centuries before the first chemistry textbook, engineered systems to extract the white gold that fueled empires. You're standing at the entrance to a void, a small wooden door in the side of a hill that looks more like a hobbit hole than the gateway to an industrial marvel. The air that puffs out smells ancient, sharp, and sterile. You probably wouldn't survive this, not the real way. The darkness, the backbreaking labor, the constant threat of collapse or flood. It was a life expectancy measured in seasons, not years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet, zero-cost way to support these deep dives. And as always, I'd love to know where in the world you're re-listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see this sleepy community span the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take the first step and the world changes. The green, sunlit world of oak forests and birdsong vanishes, replaced by a sloping, narrow tunnel shored up with heavy, dark timbers. The only light comes from your own imagined torch, flickering shadows that dance and leap against the walls. The air grows cool, but it's not the refreshing cool of a forest shade. It's a deep, penetrating cold, the kind that lives in stone. And the smell? It's overwhelming. It's the smell of brine, of minerals, of damp earth, and something else. The faint metallic tang of iron tools long since rusted away. You trudge deeper, your boots scuffing on a path that isn't made of dirt. It's grit, it's crushed salt. With every step, you are walking on the refuse of centuries, the literal dust of forgotten labor. You reach out and touch the wall. It's not rough-hewn rock, it's smooth, almost soapy, and it's cool to the touch. You're inside the deposit itself. This is the prize. This is the white gold. This entire region, a vast swath of the Carpathian Basin, sits atop one of the largest rock salt deposits in the world. This is a mainstream historical fact that underpins everything. You are standing inside the crystallized ghost of the Paratethys Sea. Millions of years ago, a vast, shallow ocean covered this land. As the continents shifted and the climate changed, this sea evaporated, leaving behind unfathomably thick layers of sodium chloride, which were then buried by millennia of sediment. The miners who came here didn't know about the Paratethys, of course. They just knew that here the earth itself was edible. The earth was wealth. You feel the air clinging to your skin, making it feel tight and dry. You can taste the salt on your lips already. This substance was life. It was the only way to preserve meat through a long, brutal winter. It was vital for livestock, for tanning leather, for medicine, and for the human body itself. Roman soldiers were famously paid a portion of their wages in salt, the salarium, from which we get our word salary. A soldier who wasn't doing his job was deemed not worth his salt. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of a Roman legionary complaining to his centurion that his bonus is just a bit too coarse this month. You move forward, shuffling deeper into the oppressive quiet. The silence is profound, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water somewhere in the distance, a sound that, as you'll soon learn, is the single most terrifying noise in a salt mine. This early in the tunnel system, things are small. This is the beginning of the story. You're in the oldest part of the workings, the place where humanity first decided to stop scraping salt from the surface and start chasing the deposit down. This is the moment of transition. For centuries, maybe millennia, the local Dacian tribes, the people who lived here before the Romans ever drew a map of the region, had a simpler method. They found the places where underground springs bubbled up through the salt deposit, creating natural brine pools. They would gather this salty water in wide, shallow clay pots and simply let the sun evaporate it, leaving a crusty, precious white powder. But that was small scale. It was enough for a village, maybe a tribe. It wasn't enough to build an economy. Historians still argue whether the pre-Roman Dacians ever engaged in organized deep-shaft mining, or if they were exclusively harvesting from these surface springs. The evidence for massive Dacian mines is thin, But their hill forts were often strategically placed right near these surface salt licks. They knew exactly what they were guarding. They were guarding the resource that would eventually draw the Roman Empire itself to their doorstep. You feel a sense of unease settle over you. The passage is narrow, the ceiling low. You have to duck your head. You're already feeling the psychological weight of the millions of tons of rock and earth above you. It's a physical pressure on your mind. You think about the first person who decided to dig deeper. What possessed them? Was it greed, desperation, or just the logical next step? You see the tool marks on the wall, not from pneumatic drills, but from simple hard iron picks, gouges, scratches, the sheer mind-numbing effort it took to win every single inch of this space. You're walking into a monument of pure brute force labor. And yet it's not just brute force. You're about to see how these ancient miners, with no formal training, became masters of geology, ventilation, and structural engineering, all while working in a darkness so complete it felt like a solid object. Their laboratory was this mine, their textbook was the salt itself, and their final exam was surviving the day. You find it hard to breathe, and you wonder if it's the air or just the thought of it. You pull back, a sudden sense of chronological vertigo. The pick marks on these walls, the heavy timbers. This is already a solution to a problem. This is phase 2. To understand why these tunnels were ever dug, you have to rewind. You have to go back up to the surface, back before these cramped artificial passages even existed. You let the oppressive darkness of the mine dissolve, and in your mind's eye, you push back up into the sunlight. It's not the same forest you left. It's centuries earlier. The air is thick with wood smoke and the sharp, tangy smell of boiling brine. You are standing in a muddy, sun-dappled clearing. There are no tunnels, no shafts. The centerpiece of this entire operation is a large, bubbling spring. This is a slatina, a salt spring. You watch as a group of people draped in rough-spun wool and wearing leather moccasins move with purpose. These are the Dacians, the fierce, independent tribes who inhabited this land long before the Roman eagle ever cast a shadow here. They aren't miners in the way you're thinking. They are harvesters. They are salt boilers. You see them dipping large, shallow clay vessels into the bubbling pool. The water that fills them is crystal clear, but you know it's saturated with the treasure from the mountain's heart. This is the mainstream historical fact of the era. The earliest salt extraction wasn't digging, it was boiling. The Dacians and many other Bronze and Iron Age cultures relied on these natural brine springs, a gift from the earth. They would channel the water into these wide, shallow ceramic pans and set them over roaring fires. You see dozens of these small fires, each tended by a woman or a young boy. They feed the flames with split logs, and a constant column of steam rises into the forest canopy. It's a slow, tedious process. You watch a pot as the water bubbles away, a white crust forming along the rim like frost. After hours of boiling and topping up the water, they are left with a thick, grayish sludge of salt crystals. This sludge is then scooped into smaller, conical clay molds and placed near the fire to dry completely. The result is a solid, tapered cone of salt. To get the salt out, the mold has to be broken. Archaeologists find thousands upon thousands of these ceramic fragments, a type of pottery so common it has its own name, briquetage. It's the ancient equivalent of disposable packaging. You walk over to a drying rack. The salt cones are rough, gray, and probably full of ash bugs and bits of leaf. Not exactly the artisanal pink Himalayan stuff you'd find in a modern supermarket. But to these people, it was priceless. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of a Dacian warrior complaining that his salt cone is too smoky this week. This was their industry. It was open air, seasonal, and reliant on two things: an endless supply of wood for the fires and the natural generosity of the spring. Historians and archaeologists still debate the scale of this operation. Was this just a collection of scattered family-level activities, with each household boiling its own winter supply? Or did powerful Dacian kings like Burebista, who famously united the tribes, organize this into a true state-controlled industry? The sheer quantity of briquetage found at some sites suggests a level of production far beyond simple local need. It implies trade, surplus, and organized labor. This brings you to the quirky, human side of it all. You notice a small, carved wooden idol placed at the edge of the main spring. Before one woman dips her pot, she dips her fingers in the water and touches the idol's head. These springs were seen as sacred. They were liminal spaces, portals where the underworld's wealth bubbled up into the light. The salt itself was magical. You see a man with a fresh, weeping wound on his arm. He doesn't go for a bandage. He goes to a pot of fresh brine and dips his entire forearm into it, hissing through his teeth. They understood its antiseptic properties. A fascinating fringe theory suggests that the salt boilers themselves were a kind of specialized class, almost a priesthood, who understood the rituals needed to appease the spirits of the spring and ensure the flow of brine was uninterrupted. They weren't just laborers, they were the guardians of the local economy. You look at this whole scene. It's tough work, no doubt. The air is choked with smoke. Your back would ache from hauling water and wood, and the mud around the spring is a treacherous bog. It's a tough, rustic life. But compared to the cold, crushing blackness of the tunnel you just left, this seems almost idyllic. You're in the sun. You can breathe the air. You're not worried about the entire world collapsing on your head. So what changed? Why would anyone trade this for that? You look to the edge of the clearing. Two men are standing there, partially hidden by the trees. They aren't Dacians. They wear segmented armor, lorica segmentata, and carry short swords. They are Roman scouts. One of them dips a finger into the spring, tastes it, and his eyes widen. He doesn't see a sacred spring. He sees a strategic resource. He sees logistics. He sees a way to feed an army, to pay soldiers, and to fund an empire. The Romans are coming, and they're about to bring an industrial imperial scale to this sleepy little clearing. The age of simple boiling is over. The age of the quarry is about to begin. The scene melts away. The smoky sacred clearing of the Dacians is gone. You are in the same place, perhaps a few years or a decade later, but the entire world has been re-engineered. The Roman army has arrived, and with them, they have brought the full, ruthless efficiency of the empire. The air no longer smells of wood smoke, it smells of dust, iron, and sweat. You are standing on the rim of a vast, gaping wound in the earth, an open-pit quarry. It's a solaria. The ground for acres around has been cleared of trees, the stumps pulled, the earth scraped away to reveal the treasure beneath. The sunlight glints off a massive deposit of grayish-white rock salt so bright it makes you squint. This is Rome's footprint, and it is anything but light. The Romans were not impressed by the Dacian method of boiling. It was slow, wasteful of timber, a resource the army needed for forts and siege engines, and produced a dirty product. The Roman mind, the mind of an engineer and a quartermaster, saw a different solution. Why boil the water from the salt when you could just dig the salt itself? You are witnessing the shift from harvesting to industrial quarrying. You hear the constant ringing clink, clink, crack of iron on salt. The sound echoes from the gleaming white walls of the pit. You look down, and you see the men. This is the most significant change. The labor is no longer a seasonal task for local tribes. It's a brutal, organized, and unfree system. This is a mainstream historical fact. Roman mines were powered by the condemned and the conquered. You see hundreds of men, their backs dark with sweat and streaked with red from the overseer's lash. They are damnati and metallum, criminals and prisoners of war, perhaps some of the very Dacian warriors who once defended this land, now shackled at the ankle, working until they die. They move in disciplined, miserable lines, their faces caked in a white paste of salt dust and grime. You see Roman legionaries, their helmets and spears gleaming, standing guard on the quarry's rim. This isn't just a mine, it's a military prison camp. You watch the process and you see the Roman genius for order. The quarry is not a random hole. It's being dug in a series of wide concentric steps or terraces. This is a classic Roman quarrying technique, the same one they used to cut the marble for their temples. It serves two purposes. It makes the walls far more stable, preventing massive collapses, and it creates a built-in staircase for the men to haul the cut blocks from the bottom to the top. You see teams of 4, hauling a single massive salt block using leather straps slung over their shoulders, staggering up the shallow steps, their leg muscles trembling with the strain. You can't help but feel a dark irony in the phrase "not worth his salt." These men were dying for it. You spot a man who isn't covered in filth. He wears a clean tunic and stands beside a wooden tripod, squinting at the far wall of the pit. He's a menser, a Roman surveyor, a man of education. He's not looking at the men, he's looking at the angles. With his groma, a simple but effective surveying tool, he's ensuring the quarry walls remain at a safe, stable incline. He dictates where the next cut will be, updating his wax tablet with sharp, precise notes. This is the difference. The Dacians had a relationship with the salt. The Romans have a strategy for it. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact contractual nature of these mines. Was it run directly by the military, a state-owned enterprise using state-owned equipment, that is, slaves? Or did the Roman government, as they often did, lease the rights to a publicanus, a private tax collector and contractor, who paid the state a flat fee and then kept whatever profit he could mercilessly squeeze from the operation? The evidence suggests both models were used, a hybrid of public-private exploitation, and the output is staggering. You leave the quarry rim and walk to the logistics yard. You see dozens of heavy solid-wheeled ox carts. The wheels are just thick slices of a massive tree trunk. They groan and squeal under the weight of the salt blocks which have been crudely squared off. These carts, pulled by teams of straining oxen, are trundling away on a new, impossibly straight road. A Roman road, paved with gravel and stone, designed to drain water and bear heavy loads for centuries. This salt isn't just for the local garrison. It's heading for the Mureș River, then to the Danube, and from there to every corner of the empire. A quirky, lesser-known fact: a salt-free diet was a known Roman punishment. To be given salt was a basic right of a human, or a slave. To withhold it was a way to break a man. You look back at the pit. It's deep now, maybe 50 feet. And you see the problem that will end this entire phase of operations. The floor is slick with mud. A pool of dark, brackish water is collecting in the deepest part. The miners are working ankle-deep in the corrosive brine. It's rainwater, yes, but it's also the original slatna, the spring the Romans ignored, bubbling up from below. The deeper they dig, the worse the water gets. And the salt they're pulling from this deep is better, purer, but it's wet. Plus, the open pit design is vulnerable. A hard rain can turn the whole thing into a lake, dissolving the valuable walls and stopping work for weeks. The pit is becoming unstable. The Roman engineers, for all their logic, are being beaten by simple geology and weather. They are at the limit of what an open quarry can do. The next generation of miners, looking at this flooded, collapsing pit, will have to make a radical decision. If the surface salt is gone and the pit is failing, there's only one place left to go: down. You're standing at the edge of the abandoned Roman quarry. It's centuries later. The empire has receded, its straight roads crumbling, its fortresses being salvaged for building stone. The quarry itself is a massive, stagnant green lake. The terraces the Romans so carefully engineered are gone, dissolved into sloping, muddy banks. It is a failure. It is a monument to an engineering solution that met its match. But the need for salt? That has never gone away. It's a constant, primal human requirement. The local population, now a mix of post-Roman peoples and new arrivals, still needs to preserve their meat, cure their hides, and feed their cattle. The surface springs, the old Dacian way, are long since overexploited and gone. The Roman pit is a watery grave. So, what do? You watch a small group of men. They aren't soldiers, or surveyors, or slaves. They look like simple farmers. They are prospecting, wandering the hills around the flooded quarry. They are tapping the ground with iron rods. They are tasting the water in small creeks. They are looking for something. One of them stops. He drives his rod into the soft earth, pulls it out, and licks it. A grim smile. He's found it. A place where the salt dome, the mountain of salt you're standing on, is close to the surface but not yet exposed. They begin to dig. You are not watching the creation of a quarry. You are watching the creation of a hole. They dig a simple vertical shaft, just wide enough for one man to work in, maybe a meter or two across. They shore it up with rough-hewn timbers as they go, creating a crude, square-shaped tunnel straight down into the earth. You watch them haul up bucket after bucket of dirt, clay, and gravel. Using a simple wooden windlass, a hand-cranked winch, creaking and groaning under the weight. It's slow, agonizing work. You, from your modern perspective, want to scream at them about soil mechanics and load-bearing capacities. The whole thing looks like a death trap. At 20 meters down, the digging sound changes. The dull thud of a shovel in soft earth is replaced by the sharp clink of a pick on hard rock. But it's not rock, it's the salt. They've hit the deposit. Now, the real desperate genius begins. They can't make the shaft wider from the top. That would mean moving 20 meters of useless dirt, and the risk of collapse would be catastrophic. So the man at the bottom, working in a space so cramped he can't even stand up straight, starts to dig outwards. He's at the base of the shaft, and he begins to carve a small room. As he carves, the room gets wider and wider. You descend the rope ladder, your knuckles white. The air is immediately awful. It's thick, dusty, and so dry it stings your lungs. The only light is from a single, sputtering tallow candle stuck to the wall, casting huge, monstrous shadows. You are now at the bottom of the shaft, inside the newly forming chamber. This is the mainstream historical fact of the era. You are inside an ochna, a bell pit. It gets its name from its shape. A narrow vertical shaft opens up into a large bell-shaped chamber below ground. This was the dominant and most dangerous form of early medieval mining. 2 men are down here. One, his face a mask of white dust, is chipping away at the gleaming salt wall with a heavy iron pick. The other is scooping the salt fragments into a leather bucket. When it's full, he shouts, his voice strangely muffled by the salt walls, and the bucket is slowly, painstakingly hauled up to the surface by the air guy at the windlass. You can't help but chuckle at the social dynamics. The guy at the top has the most mind-numbingly boring job, just turning a crank for 10 hours a day. But he's also the only one breathing fresh air, the only one who can see the sun, and the only one who isn't in immediate mortal danger. You can imagine the daily argument. I was in the hole all day yesterday, it's your turn. Historians still argue about the precise social and economic structure of these early medieval mines. Were these free miners, villagers who worked the pits as a cooperative and shared the profits? Or was this already a feudal obligation, with a local lord or voivode claiming ownership of the land and forcing his serfs to do the digging? The truth is likely a messy combination of both, a system of quotas, taxes, and grim necessity. You notice something tucked into a crevice in the salt wall. It's a small dried flower and a piece of bread. This is the quirky human part of the terror. Miners were and are famously superstitious. They were working in a realm that wasn't theirs. They were invading the earth, and they believed the earth had spirits that did not like to be disturbed. These small offerings were meant to appease the Iellalor, the forest fairies or spirits, or maybe just the spirit of the mine itself. It was a small, desperate plea for permission, a hope that the ceiling which they were actively undermining would wait just a little bit longer to fall. You look up. The ceiling of this bell-shaped room is getting alarmingly wide. The miners, by their very nature, want to extract the most salt from this one shaft. So they dig outwards and outwards, making the bell wider and wider, leaving the center relatively untouched. They are creating a massive salt-based overhang, supported by nothing. Well, nothing but the tensile strength of the salt itself. It's an engineering design based on pure, unadulterated hope. It's the geological equivalent of Jenga, played for the highest possible stakes. You realize with a cold chill this isn't a mine, it's a trap, and the bait is the salt. You're still in that bell pit, that ochna, and the air feels wrong. It's not just the stinging dust or the lack of oxygen. It's a feeling. A deep, resonant wrongness. You look up at the vast, unsupported ceiling, a dome of greed carved out of the salt. The miners here have pushed their luck. This bell is now dozens of meters wide, and the only thing holding it up is the crystalline integrity of the salt itself. And salt, as it turns out, is a terrible building material when you're asking it to be a ceiling. Unlike granite or limestone, which can fracture but are immensely strong under compression, salt is a plastic flowing mineral. Under the colossal weight of the mountain above it, it doesn't just break, it creeps, it deforms. It flows like impossibly slow honey. You hear a sound. It's not the clink of a pick. It's a deep, abdominal groan from the earth itself. The miners freeze, their faces already white with dust, turning a shade paler. The single candle flame flickers, not from a draft, but from the sudden change in air pressure. This is the moment every miner dreads. This is the flaw. The bell pit's design is inherently self-destructive. The wider you make it to get more salt, the weaker you make the roof. It's a perfect fatal feedback loop. You're essentially digging your own tomb and just hoping you get the treasure out before the lid slams shut. A small shower of salt crystals rains down from the ceiling. Not dust, but fragments. You hear a sharp crack like a giant tree branch snapping. This is the quirky, terrifying folklore of the mines, the duhul mine, the spirit of the mine, knocking. Miners were intensely superstitious and they would read these sounds. A few taps? That's just the mine settling. A series of rapid thumps? That's a warning, a spirit telling you to get out. But a sound like that, a sound that vibrates in your teeth? That's not a warning. That's a sentence. You can almost imagine a miner new to the job asking if that sound is bad, and the veteran already scrambling for the rope just saying, "Only if you enjoy breathing." The collapse is not a single event. It's a cascade. The ceiling, under its own immense unsupported weight, begins to fail. A huge slab of salt detaches and falls, hitting the floor with a sound like a cannon shot, instantly vaporizing into a cloud of blinding white dust. This is the mainstream historical fact. The primary danger of the bell pit was its structural instability. This wasn't a maybe, it was an inevitability. These mines were time bombs. The only variable was how long they would tick. The falling slab's impact and the sudden void it leaves transfers an impossible new load to the adjacent salt. The failure ripples outwards. The entire ceiling, hundreds of tons of rock salt, simply gives up. It falls. The air is compressed so violently that it becomes a physical blow, a shock wave that extinguishes the candle and throws the miners from their feet. You are plunged into a darkness so absolute, so profound, it feels like black velvet pressed against your eyes. The roar is indescribable. It is the sound of a mountain eating itself. The shaft, the single narrow chimney to the sun, is instantly choked with a pillar of pulverized salt and stone. The rope, the miner's only lifeline, is severed and buried. The bell in less than 3 seconds has become a grave. You feel the terror, the crushing weight, the suffocating dust. But you are an observer. You float upwards through the tons of rubble, back to the surface. The men at the windlass are staring, dumbfounded. One moment they were hauling up a bucket. The next, the rope went slack and a violent whoomp of air and white dust exploded from the shaft, knocking them backwards. Now, there is just silence. And the shaft? It's gone. In its place is a new, raw sinkhole, a crater of freshly collapsed earth. Historians still argue whether these collapses were rare, shocking events that horrified the community, or a common, accepted, and terrifying cost of doing business. Given the sheer number of abandoned, collapsed bell pits pockmarking the region, the evidence leans grimly toward the latter. It was a known risk, a deadly part of the job description. The mine owner, or the village elder, stands at the rim of the new crater. He's not just mourning the lost men, though the wails of their families are already beginning to echo from the village. He's looking at a catastrophic financial loss. The shaft is gone. The mine is gone. The salt is still down there, but it's now buried under its own collapsed ceiling. You can't just dig it out. The ground here is now fractured, unstable, and mortally dangerous, and you definitely can't dig another bell pit right next to it. That would be like building a new house on the smoking ruins of the last one. This is the moment of crisis. The bell pit, the simple, intuitive solution of digging a hole and making it bigger at the bottom, is a total failure. It's a dead-end technology. The flaw has been revealed. They have to keep mining. The salt is too valuable. But they cannot do it this way. They need a new design. A radical, counterintuitive design that doesn't fight the weight of the mountain but uses it. They need an engineer. The silence at the lip of the collapsed bell pit is deafening. The wails of the widows have faded, but the economic reality remains. The community needs salt. The local lord, or the judge of the village, needs his revenue. You cannot stop. You can only learn. You stand at a new site a few hundred meters away from the first unstable crater. The ground here is solid. The divining rods have been checked. The prayers have been said. A new shaft is sunk, another dark timber-braced umbilical cord into the earth. But this time, when the pickaxes hit the salt layer, the work changes. The lesson has been paid for in blood, and the new plan is almost beautifully counterintuitive. You descend the new shaft. It's just like the last one, cramped, dark, and smelling of damp wood and brine. You reach the bottom and the miners begin to carve out the chamber, but they don't dig outwards. Not in the way they did before. They don't try to create a massive, flat-ceilinged room. Instead, they dig a small, surprisingly modest chamber, just a little wider than the shaft itself. They carefully arch the ceiling. This, you realize, is all the ceiling there will be. The single fatal flaw of the bell pit, the vast, unsupported, parallel to the surface roof, has been eliminated. The new mine will not be a wide room. It will be a deep one. This is the great innovation, the mainstream historical fact that changed everything. The creation of the trapezoidal or conical mine. You are mapping out the void in your mind. From this small, secure entry hall at the bottom of the shaft, the miners begin to work down. They start carving out the floor. But with each new layer they remove, with every meter they descend, they widen the chamber. The walls are no longer vertical, and they certainly don't curve inwards like a bell. They slope outwards. You are inside an inverted cone, or more accurately, a massive steep-walled trapezoid. The ceiling, the most dangerous part, remains a small, strong, manageable arch. The floor, as they dig deeper, becomes vast. You stand back and admire the physics of it, a brutalist subterranean architecture. The crushing vertical pressure of the mountain, the stress that destroyed the bell pit, is now harmless. It pushes down on the small arched ceiling and is deflected outwards down the sloping walls. The walls themselves, which are now immensely thick, act as colossal buttresses, transferring that unimaginable load safely into the wide, solid floor of the mine. The mine's own shape has become its support system. It's a design that defies the crushing weight of the earth by elegantly redirecting it, making the mountain its own load-bearing structure. It is, frankly, genius. Historians and mining engineers still argue whether this design was a single eureka moment by one anonymous Transylvanian genius, or a slow, iterative process of trial and error over decades. Was there a mine beta, a bell pit 2.0 that was just slightly less wide? The archaeological record is thin on these transitional mines, which suggests the bell pit failure was so total, so catastrophic, that the next design had to be a radical leap. You can almost picture the mine's owner staring at the crater and saying, "Right, the last one fell in. What if we built one that wanted to fall out?" It's the kind of desperate, back-of-the-napkin brilliance that changes an industry forever. This new shape solves the problem of collapse, but it creates a host of new, fascinating challenges. You are now standing on the floor of the mine, but this floor is a moving target. It's the active workface, and it's slowly, inch by inch, descending into the earth. The chamber becomes vast, not wide but tall. You look up. The ceiling, the small arch you saw them carve, is now 30 meters above you. It's a tiny patch of blackness, barely visible. The shaft opening is just a pinprick of even darker black. You are in an artificial canyon. The acoustics are staggering. A single clink of a pickaxe echoes a dozen times, bouncing off the sloping, angular walls. You shout, and your voice comes back to you as a ghostly, layered whisper. You notice the quirky human side effect of this new design. In the bell pit, the miners were always close to the exit shaft. They could yell up to the surface and after a few echoes be heard. Here, in this colossal, echoing void, you're completely disconnected. You see a miner finished with his block walk over to the base of the shaft. He doesn't yell. He pulls a rope, which rings a heavy iron bell 100 meters up on the surface. They've had to invent a signaling system. You can imagine the comedy of errors on the first day. Did he say, "Pull up the salt," or "I'm being attacked by a salt badger"? This new, safer mine is also far more isolating. It's a lonely, dark, deep world. But it is, for the first time, a stable one. They have engineered the void. They have created a chamber that can be dug for centuries, a room that can grow to be hundreds of meters deep and never, ever collapse. They have conquered the vertical. But in doing so, they have created a brand new, invisible, and utterly lethal problem. You take a deep breath, and you gag. The air down here is terrible. You're standing at the bottom of this new, magnificent, and stable mine. It's a cathedral of salt, an inverted pyramid of human ingenuity. The echo of the signal bell is still rattling around the vast, sloping walls. You watch the huge leather bucket, laden with hundreds of pounds of salt, begin its slow, swaying ascent toward the tiny pinprick of light 100 meters above you. The men at the workface lean on their picks, wiping sweat from their brows with forearms caked in white dust. They are safe. The roof isn't going to fall. The mine is a triumph. And yet, you can't breathe. You take a gasping breath, and the air is wrong. It's not just stale. It's heavy. It's dead. It has a metallic, sour taste that clings to the back of your throat. You look at the miner's torch, a resinous pine branch jammed into a crack in the salt wall. The flame, which should be burning a bright, smoky orange, is sputtering. It's a low, weak, almost bluish nub, flickering as if it too is fighting for its life. You suddenly feel a dull, pounding headache behind your eyes. You feel dizzy, your limbs heavy and uncooperative. You're not just tired, you're being poisoned. This is the new hurdle, the second great filter of mining. The conical mine solved the problem of solids, the crushing weight of the earth. But in doing so, it created a lethal new problem with gases. This is the mainstream historical fact. The miners are suffocating in their own exhaled breath. You are standing at the bottom of a 100-meter deep man-made bottle. Every person down here is a small biological furnace, taking in oxygen and pumping out carbon dioxide. The torches and candles are doing the same, but far more efficiently. And carbon dioxide, as you remember from high school chemistry, is heavier than air. It sinks. It's not rising up the shaft. It's pooling at the bottom, right where you and the miners are working. You are standing in an invisible, slowly rising pool of your own waste gas. In the old, shallow bell pits, this was less of a problem. They were more open to the surface, and some basic passive air exchange diffusion could occur. But this new mine, so deep, so vast, so stable, is a perfect trap. The miners, with no concept of atmospheric chemistry, just knew this as black damp or choke damp. They called it the air stricat, the spoiled air. They knew that after a few hours of work, the torches would gutter. The headaches would start and men would collapse, falling asleep at the workface, never to wake up. You can imagine the grim, practical jokes. Don't lie down for a nap, Georga. You might get a little too comfortable. You see them trying to fix it. One miner takes his heavy leather cloak and wafts it uselessly in the air, trying to push the bad air up the shaft. It's like trying to empty a lake with a teaspoon. It does nothing but make him more out of breath, adding more CO2 to the deadly pool. What about a fire? A big fire at the base of the shaft would create a hot updraft, right? A few of them try this, lighting a small bonfire. The fire roars for a minute, then sputters, starves itself of the remaining oxygen, and dies in a cloud of acrid smoke, making the problem exponentially worse. Historians and archaeotechnologists still debate how these medieval miners truly conceptualized this. They didn't know about CO2. They probably saw it as a malevolent force, the duhul mine, the spirit of the mine, actively trying to smother them. It was a presence, a bad vapor that flowed from the earth itself. They didn't think of it as something they were creating. They thought of it as something they were disturbing. This brings you to the quirky, dark reality of working in the soup. They needed a canary, not literally a bird perhaps, but a test. Before the miners would descend after the mine had been left fallow for a day, they would lower a torch on a rope. If the flame went out at 20 meters, you knew the bad air was high and you couldn't work. If it went out at the bottom, well, you had a few hours maybe. This led to a grim social pecking order. The new guy, or the guy who lost a bet, was the first one down the ladder. He was the human guinea pig, the air tester. You look at this massive, successful, unusable mine. It's a paradox. They have access to untold wealth, a mountain of white gold, but they are being gatekept by an invisible, odorless enemy. The conical design is too stable. It's a stagnant, unmoving column of air. The single shaft is both an entrance and an exit, and the air simply has no reason to move. It's a one-way street for miners, but a dead end for ventilation. They can't make the shaft wider. That would bring back the old problem of collapse. They can't just not breathe. The entire multi-generational project is on the verge of failure, not from a bang, but from a silent, creeping suffocation. They need to give this mountain a set of lungs. They need to make the mine breathe. And the solution they'll come up with is as brilliantly simple and as brutally laborious as the conical mine itself. They're going to have to dig another hole. You're back on the surface, standing in the sweet, clean air, the sun warm on your face. You've just watched the miners retreat from the spoiled air below, coughing, dizzy, and defeated. Their magnificent conical mine, a fortress against collapse, has become an unusable gas chamber. The mine is stagnant. The work has stopped. The owner, the Jude, the miners themselves. They are all standing around the main shaft, staring at it as if it's a fickle, murderous god. They're at an impasse. And then, the new plan is formed. It is so outrageously laborious, so mind-numbingly difficult, you almost have to laugh. They're going to do it all again, you watch them. They don't just pick a random spot. They pace out a distance from the main shaft, let's say 50 meters. They bring in a man who seems to understand the angles of the sun. They use plumb bobs, a simple weighted string, to find a perfect vertical. They are surveying. They are planning. And then they break ground. You are witnessing the start of the ALEC, the ventilation shaft. They are digging a second, parallel hole. Just as deep, just as narrow, and just as shored up with timber as the first one. This is an act of pure, brute force faith. They are doubling their unproductive setup work, spending months digging a hole that will, by itself, produce zero salt. It's a colossal gamble on a principle of physics they haven't even named. You descend into this new shaft as it's being dug. It's the same miserable, cramped, terrifying work as before. Bucket by bucket, the earth is hauled up. Then, they hit the salt. They dig and they dig and they dig. 100 meters down. Now they are at the same level as the main mine. But they are separated by 50 meters of solid, crystalline salt. For this to work, the two shafts must connect. You are now at the bottom of the main mine, the Akna Mare. The air is foul. The torches are dim. A team of miners working in short, gasping shifts is digging a horizontal tunnel, a gallery, in the direction of where they hope the new shaft is. This is the engineering marvel. How do you aim? In total darkness 100 meters underground, how do you dig a perfectly straight line to hit a 2-meter-wide target you cannot see? Historians and mining archaeologists still argue about the exact surveying methods used. Did these medieval miners, often dismissed as primitive, actually possess sophisticated knowledge of geometry passed down from the Romans? Were they using magnetic compasses, water levels, and calibrated ropes to plot a precise vector? Or was it a cruder, more nerve-wracking, and frankly more human method? You can almost see it, a miner in the main gallery, pressing his ear to the cold salt wall. He holds up a hand for silence. Far away in the other shaft, another man strikes the wall with a hammer. Thump, thump, thump. The sound travels through the solid salt. The miner listens, moves down the wall, listens again. It's louder here. He makes a chalk mark. Dig this way. You're in the gallery as the final few feet are breached. The air is so bad you can barely stand. The miners are working for only a minute at a time before retreating. The pickaxe swings, it strikes the wall and it doesn't clink, it thunks, it breaks through. A small hole no bigger than your fist opens up, and from it a miracle. A whistle, a high-pitched whining sound. A jet of cold, fresh, heavenly air blasts through the opening, hitting the miners in the face like a splash of water. It's the sweetest, most beautiful air they have ever breathed. They gasp and cheer, a sound quickly whipped away by the new wind. This is the mainstream historical fact. They have created a thermosiphon, a natural chimney. You're standing in a giant U-shaped tube. The cold, fresh, dense air on the surface sinks down the main shaft, the downcast. This column of heavy, cold air pushes the warm, Stale, CO2-laden spoiled air from the mine up the new secondary shaft, the upcast. The mine has a respiratory system. It has an in-breath and an out-breath. A permanent, life-saving breeze now scours the bottom of the mine, clearing the black damp as fast as the men and torches can produce it. The torches roar to life, burning brightly, their flames now bent sideways in the constant draft. The headaches vanish. The dizziness is gone. But what if the air pressure on the surface is wrong? What if it's a calm, hot day and the draft stalls? They need to guarantee the flow. This is the quirky, brilliant part. At the bottom of the new upcast shaft, you see them build a stone hearth. They light a fire, a small, smoky but permanent fire. This is the four de aérage, the ventilation furnace. This fire heats the air in the upcast shaft, making it significantly lighter and hotter than the air in the downcast shaft. This temperature differential creates a powerful, relentless one-way draft. The fire literally sucks the bad air out of the mine 24 hours a day. They've built an engine, a fire-powered lung. They have conquered the vertical, they have conquered the air. You stand in the cool, life-giving breeze, and you finally feel safe. You look down at your boots. They're wet. You're standing in a shallow, growing puddle of very, very salty water. You hear it again, that sound from the very beginning. Drip, drip, drip. You look down. The sound, that incessant drip, 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 is coming from everywhere and nowhere. It's the echo of 1,000 tiny leaks. The floor of this vast, dark cathedral is no longer a dry, crystalline surface. It's a slick, treacherous bog. You're standing ankle-deep in a pool of dark, clinging, icy-cold water. You shift your feet, and the liquid, a thick, corrosive sludge, seeps over the tops of your leather boots. A sensation that makes you hiss through your teeth. The fresh, life-giving breeze from the ventilation shaft is still blowing, but it has a new, miserable quality. It's a damp wind, a chilling, moisture-laden draft that cuts through your wool tunic and seems to settle directly into your bones. You are cold, you are wet, and you are standing in the middle of the single greatest threat this mine has ever faced. This is the third great hurdle. This is the enemy below. This is Apasarata, the brine. This is the mainstream historical fact that governed the life and death of every salt mine. Salt is, by its very nature, water-soluble. You are standing inside a mountain of seasoning, and the mountain is leaking. The groundwater that saturates the earth, the rainwater that seeps down from the surface, the ancient trapped waters of the Paratethys Sea, it's all trying to get in. It presses against the salt dome with relentless hydraulic pressure, and where it finds a fissure, a weakness, a microscopic crack, it pushes its way through. And this isn't just a flood in the way you'd think of a coal mine. A coal mine floods, you pump it out, and you're left with a wet coal mine. A salt mine floods, and you're left with a lake. The water doesn't just fill the void, it consumes it. You walk over to the wall where a steady trickle of water is running down the glistening, sloping face. You watch as it reaches the pool at the bottom. The edge of the pool isn't just a water line, it's a cutting line. The water is actively, visibly eating the mine. It's dissolving the walls. It's destroying the very white gold they're here to extract. And worse, it's undermining the entire brilliant structure. The conical mine was a work of genius because its sloping walls transferred the mountain's weight to the wide, solid floor. But now that floor is a dissolving saucer. The brine is nibbling away at the base of the walls, creating an undercut. It's a matter of time before the walls, their foundation eaten away, collapse inwards. You see a basha, a mine foreman, wade through the pool. He's not panicking. This is just the new, terrible reality. He reaches a spot where a new spring has bubbled up from the floor. He squats down, dips a calloused, grime-covered finger into the water, and brings it to his lips. He tastes it. You almost laugh at the absurdity. He's tasting the water in a salt mine. What's he checking for? Freshness? But this is the quirky, vital, and non-superstitious reality. He is an amateur hydrologist, and this is his most important test. He needs to know the salinity of the leak. If the water tastes incredibly, overpoweringly salty, that's bad, but it's manageable. It means the water is already saturated with salt. Its hunger to dissolve more is low. But if the water tastes weak, sweet, or even just less salty, that is a catastrophe. That is sweet water, fresh water, invading the mine, and it is ravenous. It will dissolve the salt many times faster than saturated brine. You can imagine the dark gallows humor. Bad news, lads. This new leak is delicious. We're ruined. Historians and mining geologists still argue about the primary source of this water. Was it mostly surface water, rainwater, and snowmelt that found its way down through faults in the rock above the salt dome? Or was it connate water, ancient pressurized aquifers trapped in the sedimentary layers below and around the salt, which were breached by digging too deep? The answer is likely all of the above, a perfect storm of hydrology conspiring to drown the miners' work. The miners themselves, of course, had their own theories. This wasn't geology. This was malevolence. This was the Mama Ape, the mother of waters, an ancient spirit, furious that they had disturbed her underground rivers. You see a small waxen flower figurine floating in a dark corner of the pool. A desperate, soggy offering, a plea for the water to stop. It won't stop. The problem is permanent. The mine, this perfect, stable, breathable cathedral, is now a bathtub with 1,000 leaky faucets. The race is on. The miners have to cut the salt blocks faster than the water can dissolve them. The floor is a treacherous, slippery mess, making every movement difficult. The men's boots and leggings are perpetually soaked in the corrosive brine, leading to agonizing skin ulcers that never heal. The iron tools rust in days. The air is thick with a cold, clammy mist. The entire operation is on the verge of being swallowed by a cold, salty grave. They can't plug the leaks. The leaks are the mountain. They can't stop the water. They have to move it. They have to declare war on the water, and their only weapon is a bucket. The war has been declared, and you've just been handed your weapon. It's a bucket. You stand in the frigid, ankle-deep brine, the wet, cold misery seeping into your very bones. The foreman, his face a mask of grim determination, is shouting. He's not shouting at the water, he's shouting at you. He's organizing the line. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder with a dozen other men, forming a human chain. This is the first, desperate, and most primitive line of defense. This is the solution. You are the solution. And as you take your place, you realize this is less a battle plan and more a form of organized panic. The line doesn't go up the main shaft. That's the freight elevator reserved for hauling the precious salt blocks. No, your line snakes from the deepest, wettest part of the mine floor over to a series of crude, slimy wooden platforms and ladders built against the wall and leading up the ventilation shaft. The fresh air shaft is about to become the disgusting water drain. You look up. The man above you on the ladder has his feet at the level of your head. The man below you is just a shadow in the churning dark water. You hear a shout from the bottom, "Go!" A bucket appears. It's not a neat wooden pail. It's a heavy, misshapen thing, made of thick, greasy oxhide stitched together with sinew. It's overflowing with dark, corrosive brine. The man below you, grunting with the effort, heaves it up. You grab the handle. The leather is slimy, and the weight is staggering. This isn't just water. It's a saturated salt solution, dense and heavy. You haul it up, your shoulders screaming in protest, the muscles in your back feeling like they're tearing. You pass it to the man above you who doesn't even look, just grabs it and continues the motion. And another bucket is already in your hands. And another. This is the mainstream historical fact of early mine drainage, the human relay, the Lancel Galetzler. It was the only option before the invention of complex machinery. It was a human-powered pump, a biological conveyor belt, and it was, in every single way, pure, unadulterated hell. You're not just lifting. You're soaked. Every bucket sloshes. The man above you, his hands numb with cold, fumbles a handoff. Half a bucket of icy, corrosive brine cascades down, splashing over your head and shoulders. It stings your eyes, making you cry out. The salt finds every tiny cut on your hands, every scrape, and sets them on fire. You can imagine the gallows humor. The good news is my hands are so pickled I'll never get an infection. The bad news is I think I'm dissolving. You fall into the rhythm. Lift, twist, heave. Lift, twist, heave. It's a grotesque, miserable ballet. The only sound is the rhythmic slosh of the buckets, the grunts of the men, and the constant, hateful drip of the water you're trying to fight. Historians and labor economists still argue whether this grueling work was a punishment duty or a specialized role. Were these men the Galatari, a dedicated, low-status crew of water carriers? Or was this a hated, rotating shift that all the miners, even the skilled salt cutters, had to endure when the leaks got bad? Given the sheer, brutal strength required, it was likely a crew of the youngest, strongest, and most expendable men, working themselves to exhaustion for a few extra pennies. And here's the quirky, frustrating tidbit. The bucket itself is a traitor. You look at the one in your hands. It's leaking, not just sloshing, but actively dribbling from a dozen tiny seams. The leather, despite being greased with tallow, can't hold the corrosive brine forever. So for every 10 gallons you lift, you're probably putting 1 gallon right back onto the floor. You are a leaky pump, trying to empty a rising lake using a leaky bucket. The sheer Sisyphean futility of it all is enough to make you want to just sit down in the water and weep. You've been at this for hours. Your arms are numb. Your back is a single, solid column of pain. You look down. The water isn't lower. It's higher. It's now up to your knees. The Sweetwater leak, the one you all dreaded, is pouring into the mine faster than your human chain can possibly lift it out. Every man in the line knows it. You can see the desperation in their eyes. You're not just losing. You're losing fast. The mine, this vast, ingenious cathedral, is drowning. The work has to stop. The salt cutters are retreating, grabbing their tools. The foreman, his voice hoarse, is shouting to abandon the bailing line. Sus! Sus! Get out! You scramble up the slimy ladders, the men pushing from below. You collapse at the top of the shaft, gasping in the fresh air, which now just feels cold and wet. You look back down into the void. The torches at the bottom are extinguished one by one as the dark water rises. The mine is lost. This whole multi-year, multi-generational project, defeated by a leak. This human-powered solution, this desperate relay of leather buckets, is a failure. It's like trying to fight a dragon with a handful of pebbles. You don't just need more buckets. You don't just need more men. You need a machine. You need something that doesn't get tired. Something that doesn't feel the cold. Something that can lift tons of water, not just a few gallons. You need an engine. And you need it to be powered by something stronger than a man's back. The drowned mine is a silent, cold tomb. The water level has stabilized, a dark mirror reflecting the single pinprick of light from the shaft 100 meters above. The miners are on the surface, unemployed, cold, and staring at their failure. The human bucket chain was a joke. It was like trying to stop a river with a picket fence. The basha, the foreman, and the mine owner are in a heated, desperate discussion. You don't need to speak their language to understand the conversation. We need more power. Men are not strong enough. We need something else. And so, the plan is born, not from a miner's pick, but from a carpenter's adze. You are standing in a newly cleared patch of forest, not far from the main shaft. The largest, straightest, most perfect oak and beech trees are being felled. You hear the thwack, thwack of axes, the rasp of a pit saw. This is not a simple repair. This is a construction. They are building a machine. You watch as a massive, perfectly straight oak trunk, at least a meter thick and a dozen meters long, is stripped of its bark and planed smooth. This is the heart. This is the great vertical axle. It is so enormous that it can't be carried. It's rolled on logs by a dozen straining men. This is the mainstream historical fact. You are witnessing the assembly of the Krivak. In English, it's a whim or a gin, short for engine. It is a massive, horse-powered, vertically oriented capstan designed for one purpose: heavy, relentless lifting. It's a simple machine, a brilliant application of the lever and the wheel and axle, scaled up to an almost comical degree. This is the answer to the water. This is the brute force solution. You watch the assembly. The great axle is lowered, with immense care, into a new purpose-built wide and shallow shaft, dug right next to the main okna. It's seated at the bottom in a massive, greased stone socket, allowing it to pivot. At the top, it's held in place by a heavy timber framework, a building that is being constructed around it. Then, they build the drum. Carpenters, clinging to scaffolding, attach a huge cylindrical cage around the middle of the axle. It's easily 10 meters in diameter, a massive spool. Around this drum, a new single rope will be wound. A rope as thick as your arm, woven from hemp, treated with tar and tallow to resist the corrosive brine. At the very top of the axle, 4 enormous wooden beams, levers, are slotted through the axle head, sticking out like the spokes of a giant wheel. This is where the power source will be attached. You hear a whinny. 4 large, powerful horses are led into the structure. They are harnessed, not to a cart, but to the ends of these 4 beams. You are standing inside a massive, wooden engine powered by muscle and hay. The entire structure is a testament to the carpenter's art. There are almost no metal parts. It's all mortise and tenon joints held together with massive wooden pegs. It's a work of genius, a machine that can be built and repaired using only the forest and the skills of a local craftsman. Historians and technologists still debate the origin of this specific krivac design. Was it a local invention, a Transylvanian original built by brilliant carpenters? Or was it a technology imported from the German or Czech-speaking mining regions of Saxony or Bohemia, brought in by an itinerant mine master, a burgmeister? The word krivac itself is of Slavic origin, suggesting a complex, cross-European flow of ideas, a whispered secret of horsepower shared across the mountains. Now for the test. The men stand back. The driver, a young boy with a long whip, stands in the center near the axle. The horses are given a tug. They lean into their harnesses, their hooves digging into the circular, packed earth floor. The driver cracks the whip. Mishka, move. The horses begin to walk. They plod in a slow, monotonous, endless circle. And the machine, it groans. It's the sound of a ship's hull in a storm, a deep wooden creak as the immense friction is overcome. The great central axle begins to turn. The massive drum revolves. The thick hemp rope, tied to a bucket the size of a bathtub, slowly, majestically disappears into the dark shaft. You notice the quirky detail. The horses are all blindfolded. You chuckle, thinking it's to stop them from getting dizzy. But the driver explains it's to keep them calm. Without the blindfolds, they would see the terrifying, open, 100-meter-deep hole in the center of their path. They would see the other horses moving. They would panic. Blindfolded, they live in a world of simple forward motion. It's a dark, plodding, circular life. A huge leather bucket, brimming with 500 liters of black, stinking brine, emerges from the shaft. It swings over, a mechanism tips it, and the water cascades away in a new drainage ditch. The bucket descends, the horses plod, the axle groans. The mine is being pumped. The age of the human chain is over. The age of horsepower has begun. You stand in the mine and for the first time it feels dry. Well, not dry, but the water is managed. It's no longer a rising existential threat. It's a grumbling, defeated foe, now just a shallow, ankle-deep pool at the very bottom, in a specially dug sump pit. The change is profound. The air is still. The constant, panicked shouting of the bucket chain is gone. Instead, the whole mine is filled with a new sound. It's a deep, rhythmic groaning. A creak, thud, creak, thud, that comes from the world above. It is the sound of the krivac. It is the sound of horsepower. The machine, built in desperation to fight the water, is working. Abasha, the foreman, is standing with you at the bottom of the main shaft. He's staring up into the darkness, listening to the groaning engine. You see a light dawn in his eyes. He is a practical man, a man of logistics. He looks at the krivac's thick hemp rope, the one attached to the 500-liter water bucket, as it rises, dripping, to the surface. He's watching raw power. He's watching a machine that can lift more weight than 50 men. Then, he turns his head. He looks across the vast conical chamber to the ventilation shaft. Over there, a separate, smaller team of men is working a simple, hand-cranked windlass. With agonizing slowness, they are hauling up a single 100-pound block of salt. The men on the crank are sweating, their muscles bulging, their faces red with strain. The foreman looks at the massive, effortless power of the krivac. He looks at the pathetic, straining effort of the hand windlass. The absurdity of the situation is suddenly blindingly clear. Why are they using a cannon to kill a mosquito, the water, and a pea shooter to kill a bear, the salt? The krivac's true power isn't bailing, it's lifting. This is the mainstream historical fact. The horsewhim, the krivac, was the central engine of all pre-industrial mining. It wasn't just for water. It was the solution to the problem of gravity. But you can't just tie a block of salt to the water bucket. You need a redesign. You are on the surface inside the dark circular engine room. The carpenters are back. The mine has been re-engineered. The Krivak's great central axle now has 2 drums, not one, wrapped with 2 separate ropes. They are wound in opposite directions. This is the masterstroke. As the horses plod in their endless circle, one rope descends into the shaft, while the other rope ascends. The machine is now a counterbalanced system. The foreman's genius is this. They will attach the empty water bucket to the down rope. Its weight will help offset the weight of the up rope, which is now being attached to a heavy-duty cargo net, or a simple iron hook, for the salt. The horses no longer have to lift the full dead weight of the salt. They just have to lift the difference. This changes everything. You're at the workface. The miners are no longer cutting small, hand-liftable bricks. The Basha is shouting, "Bigger, my mare." They are now using their picks and chisels to carve out megaliths. You watch them cut a Wanaton block, a perfect, gleaming cube of white gold. It slid, using greased wooden rollers, to the lift zone under the main shaft. The hook comes down from the darkness. A man slips a harness around the block, and with a shout and the ring of a bell, the Krivak engages. The horses strain, the axle groans, and the 1-ton block, a thing that 20 men couldn't budge, rises smoothly, majestically, into the air. The mine's output has just increased tenfold. This isn't a workshop anymore, it's a factory. This new, complex machine needs a new kind of specialist. This is the quirky, high-status, and incredibly dangerous job of the Krivakar, the whim mechanic. You're standing near the top of the axle, 10 meters off the ground on a narrow wooden platform. The Krivakar is beside you and you're terrified. He's calm. The horses are unhitched for a break. His job? Maintenance. He moves with the confidence of an acrobat, walking along the massive stationary spokes. A bucket of gray, foul-smelling tallow, animal fat, in his hand. He slathers handfuls of the grease into the axle's socket to keep it from seizing. He checks the wooden pegs. Then, he inspects the rope, walking its length, his calloused fingers feeling for any fray, any weakness that could send a ton of salt plummeting 100 meters. He's the IT specialist of his day. If this machine breaks, the entire mine stops. His job is more important than anyone's. But what about stopping a load? The horses can pull, but can they hold? You watch as a massive block is halfway up. A horse stumbles, and the whole system lurches, the rope screaming as it slips. The multi-ton load wants to fall. Historians and engineers still debate the exact nature of the braking systems on these early Krivaks. How did they stop a catastrophic failure? Was it a simple, massive band brake, a giant lever with a friction block pressed against the drum, or a sophisticated ratchet and powell system that clicked into place, preventing reversal? You see the answer. As the load begins to slip, the driver shouts and 2 men, the brakemen, slam their full weight onto a massive tree trunk-sized lever. The end of the lever, a block of hardwood, smashes against the spinning drum. The smell of burning wood instantly fills the air. The axle groans, smokes, and holds. It's a terrifying, crude, but effective system. The Krivak has conquered gravity. It moves the water, it moves the salt. It is the mine's heart, and it's pumping white gold to the surface. Awaiting Kontinite, the Krivak's rhythmic, groaning pulse is now the heartbeat of the mine. It's the sound of power, the sound of an engine that has conquered water and gravity. But you're not up there with the blindfolded horses. You're down here, 100 meters below, at the workface. And here the sound of the Krivak is just a distant, vibrating hum. Down here in the vast, sloping, torchlit canyon, the air is filled with a different set of sounds. The sharp clink of iron, the shriek of a blade slicing through crystal, the steady tap-tap-tap of a hammer, and the sudden, sharp crack of a block giving way. The Krivak is the truck, but you are the factory worker on the line. The heavy lifting is automated, yes, but the product, the salt itself, is still 100% artisanal, handmade by you, and you've been handed your tools. You grip the tool that has been thrust into your hand. It's the tourniquet, the miner's pick. You heft it. The handle is made of dense, smooth hornbeam or beechwood, worn to a perfect custom grip by the man who used it before you. It's warm from his sweat. But the business end, that's the marvel. This is not the simple two-pointed pickaxe you might imagine. This is a specialized, multi-purpose instrument. This is the mainstream historical fact. The Transylvanian salt miner's pick was a combination tool. One end is a sharp hardened iron point, for shattering, for punching holes, for making the first, rough impressions. But the other end is a flat, horizontal adze-like blade, a wide, sharp chisel. It's the 15th century equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. If the only tools you need are break and break differently, you swing it at the wall. The salt isn't like granite. You don't just smash it. It's a crystal. It's soft in a way. It's carvable. You use the pointed end first, thwack, thwack, to punch a line of small, deep holes. Then, you flip the pick. You use the flat adze blade. You set it in the groove you've made, and you slice. The blade bites into the salt, and with a satisfying shk, a long, curling shaving of white crystal peels away. This is the key. You are not blasting. Gunpowder is a distant, terrifying future. You are not shattering. That just makes dust, and dust is worthless. You are a sculptor. You are carving the mine. You're less a miner, and more a kind of subterranean butcher, jointing the earth. This is precision work. You're not alone. An entire line of men, their bodies gleaming with a paste of salt dust and sweat, are working in a rhythmic, practiced, and highly coordinated fashion. The air is filled with the tap, tap, tap of another set of tools. You see miners kneeling, driving long, heavy iron chisels into the grooves, striking them with a barrows, a heavy, long-handled sledgehammer. Then they insert a series of thick iron wedges into the cut. A foreman shouts, and all the men strike their wedges at once. Crack. The sound is as sharp as a gunshot, echoing a dozen times around the conical chamber. A massive 10-foot-long slab of salt, perfectly defined by the cuts, splits from the wall with a groaning, tearing sound. Historians and metallurgists still argue over the quality of this iron. The constant corrosive brine would rust a normal tool in a week. The salt itself, while soft, is abrasive and dulls a point with terrifying speed. Was this just cheap local bog iron, smelted in the village and requiring constant reforging? Or was this a specialized high-carbon steel, imported at great expense from the famous foundries in Styria, Austria? A miner with a German steel pickhead would have been a man of immense status, his tool a high-performance machine. You can imagine the scene at the surface by the blacksmith's forge. He was the most popular man in town, or at least the most loudly complained to. "Georga, this pick is dull again." "Well, it was sharp when I gave it to you. Maybe stop hitting the floor with it." This brings you to the quirky, personal relationship a miner had with his tools. A man's tourniquet was his life. It was probably his property, not the mine's. He'd have to pay the smith to have it resharpened or re-steeled. You see an old miner, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, pause his work. He pulls a small whetstone from his belt pouch and lovingly hones the adze blade of his pick. He knows its balance. He knows its flaws. You're pretty sure you hear him mutter a quiet, "Good, good girl," to the inanimate object. These tools weren't just tools. They were extensions of the self, partners in a dark, dangerous dance. To drop your pick down a crevice wasn't just an accident. It was a financial and personal catastrophe. To borrow another man's pick? Unthinkable. A taboo. It would be like borrowing his wife. You stand back and just listen. It's a symphony. The deep, bass note groan of the Kryvak above. The clink, clink, clink of the picks. The steady tap, tap, tap of the hammers on the chisels. The high-pitched shing of the blades. And then the percussion, the sharp, sudden crack of the wedges, the signal of progress. It's the sound of a pre-industrial factory floor, a place of immense, coordinated, and highly skilled manual labor. They've solved the structure. They've solved the air. They've solved the water. They've solved the lifting. And now, with these simple, elegant iron tools, they've perfected the extraction. But they're not just hacking at the walls randomly. Oh no. You look at the wall you're carving. It's not a rough, jagged surface. It's flat. It's covered in Lines. You are not just a sculptor, you're a sculptor following a blueprint. You're standing at the workface, your specialized tourniquet feeling balanced and ready in your hands. You've seen the tools, you've heard the symphony of their use. But now you see the method. The foreman, the basha, isn't just pointing at the wall and saying, "Dig there." He's holding a piece of string coated in powdered charcoal against the gleaming white wall. He and another miner pull it taut and then snap it. A perfectly straight black line is left on the salt. They do this again, and again, and again. In minutes, the entire vast sloping wall of the mine has been marked out. You're not in a mine. You're in a tailor's shop and the mountain is being chalked for a new suit. You're looking at a perfect, massive grid. This is the mainstream historical fact of the system. You are not just digging for salt. You are manufacturing bricks. The entire purpose of this backbreaking labor is to produce a standardized, transportable, and sellable product. The white gold was traded in the form of uniform blocks called bucăți de sare. These weren't random chunks. They were a defined commodity. The grid you see on the wall is the blueprint for these blocks. Each rectangle, marked out in charcoal, represents one bucata. This is the moment the raw, chaotic geology of a salt dome is transformed into the ordered, disciplined geometry of a human economy. You are assigned your rectangle. Your job is to free it from the wall. You start by cutting the lines. You take a long-handled, adze-bladed pick and stand on a small, wobbly wooden platform hooked into the wall itself. Your first task is to carve the vertical grooves, the sides of the block. You swing the pick with a precise slicing motion, not a smashing one. You're not just digging, you're isolating. You cut a channel, maybe 10 centimeters wide and half a meter deep. The salt shavings, like a toxic, stinging snow, fall on the men working below you. Then you move to the other side of your rectangle and do it again. Now your block is defined on the left and the right. Next, you and the man next to you work together to cut the horizontal groove above your blocks. This creates the top. This is the hardest part. You're working overhead, your arms burning, the pick feeling like it weighs 1,000 pounds. The salt dust rains down into your eyes, your mouth, your lungs. But you cut the groove, deep and true. Now you have a row of blocks all defined on 3 sides, still attached to the mountain at their back and at their base. You're creating a massive salt-based chocolate bar, already scored for breaking. How do you get it off the wall? You're not cutting from the back, you're going to split it. You drop to the floor and the kiokanari, the hammermen, move in. You watch them. They don't use picks. They use the long, heavy iron chisels and the barrows, the sledgehammer. They place the chisels into the horizontal groove you just cut, and they begin to tap, 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 driving the chisels downwards, behind the block. Then, they take the heavy, dry wooden wedges. They hammer them into the groove. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact technique. Were the wedges primarily iron for a sharp split? Or was it the magic of wooden wedges? You watch them use the latter. They hammer the dry wooden wedges deep into the cut, and then a man comes by with a bucket of water and pours it over them. The wood thirstily begins to swell. It expands with a slow, silent, unstoppable force. You hear it. A groan, a high-pitched screech of crystal under unbearable tension. The miners all step back. The foreman holds his torch high. Crack. The sound is final. The entire row of blocks, a slab weighing many tons, lurches forward and settles, separated from the mountain. It's free. Now it's just a matter of breaking the chocolate bar into its individual pre-scored pieces with a few sharp blows. The result is a perfect, gleaming bucata, weighing perhaps half a ton, its sides rough, but its dimensions predictable. This is where the quirky part of the economy comes in. You see a miner, his block now free, take a small, sharp-pointed tool from his belt. He carves a symbol into the side of it. A cross. A circle with a dot. A rune like A. This is his sem, his sign. This is his signature. Why? Because historians suspect the miners were not paid by the hour. They were piece workers. They were paid by the block. That signature, which would still be visible when the block was hauled to the surface by the cravac, was the miner's invoice. I, Georgi, made this one. Pay me. You can imagine the foreman at the top, his book open, a runner shouting down the shaft, block of cross is up. The foreman makes a tick mark. Block of circle dot. Another tick. It's a brilliant, brutal system. It ensures maximum output. It also ensures that a man who cuts a block that is too small, or who cuts one that shatters, gets nothing for his time. It's the 15th century gig economy, and it is merciless. You've cut your block. It's a perfect one. You carve your sign. You feel a surge of pride. Now you just have to get it from the work face over to the lift zone. 50 meters away, in the pitch black, you've carved your sign. Your boccata, your gleaming half-ton block of salt, is sitting free, a testament to your skill with the tourniquet. You feel a moment of pride, which is immediately swallowed by the darkness. You look up from your work, and the reality of your situation hits you like a physical blow. You are 100 meters underground in a room the size of a cathedral, and you are holding a single sputtering flame. The darkness is not a passive absence of light. It is an active, heavy, and malevolent presence. It presses in from all sides, a thick, cold, velvet black ocean. The light from your torch doesn't penetrate this darkness. It just carves a tiny, trembling 10-foot bubble of reality. Beyond that, the void is total. Your eyes, no matter how hard they strain, can find no purchase. The vast, sloping walls, the ceiling 50 meters above, the other miners, they don't exist unless they are in their own tiny bubble of light. You look at the flame in your hand. This is your entire world. This is the mainstream historical fact of this subterranean life. A world lit by fat and wood. Before batteries, before carbide, before the simplest dynamo, there was only one way to make light: fire. And fire, down here, is a hungry, fickle, and dangerous friend. You have two choices. In your hand is a tachun, a torch. It's not a fancy, movie-style torch. It's a split piece of resinous fat wood pine dug from the roots of a long-dead tree. It burns with a bright, angry orange flame. It's powerful, but the cost is staggering. The air is choked with its smoke, a thick, acrid, pine-scented soot that coats your skin, lines your lungs, and stings your eyes. The ventilation system, that brilliant fire-powered lung, is now in a constant, losing battle against the smoke from the very torches that allow the men to see. You see another miner, a man who prefers the high-tech option. He has a candle. This is not a fragrant beeswax candle from a church. This is a luminaire de soie, a tallow candle. It's made from rendered animal fat, the same stuff you'd boil for stew. You can smell it from here. It smells rancid. It's the smell of old, cold, congealed grease, a sickly, cloying odor that combines with the mineral tang of the salt and the ever-present smell of human sweat. It gives off a weak, sputtering, yellowish light and a greasy black smoke. You can't help but think the smell is so bad you might actually prefer the total soul-crushing darkness. But the candle is slow-burning. It's efficient. This brings you to the grim economics of illumination. Historians and economic archivists still debate who paid for this light. Was it a perk of the job? Did the mine owner provide a standard allotment of one tallow candle per man per day? Or, as the grim logic of the piecework system suggests, did you have to buy it? You can picture the company store on the surface, selling you back the very tallow from the Lord's cattle, deducting the cost of the candle from the payment for the salt block you cut by its light. It's a perfect, closed-loop economy of misery. Every minute that candle sputters, it's burning your money. You'd be incentivized to work in the dimmest, most dangerous light possible, squinting, cutting corners, all to save a fraction of a penny. You look back at your torch. It's burning low. The flame is licking at your hand. You need a new one. This is the quirky and utterly terrifying side job of the mine, the copilul de lumina, the light boy. You see him. You hadn't before. He's a flicker, a shadow, moving on the edge of your vision. He's a small boy, maybe 10 years old, his face already a permanent mask of black soot. He carries a satchel of fresh tallow candles and a bundle of new pine splints. His entire job is to run alone through this vast, dark, echoing maze, from work face to work face, resupplying the miners. He is the errand boy in hell. You can't imagine the terror. He has to navigate the slippery, brine-covered floors, avoid the new sumps, listen for the groan of the krivak, and find his way by memory, all with one flickering, smoking torch of his own. You call him over, and he wordlessly, professionally hands you a new resinsticky splint, which you light from the stub of your old one. He doesn't smile. He's already gone, a fading ember swallowed by the black. You have your new light. You have your Haften block. You have your sign carved in it. And you have to get it 50 meters from here at the wall to the lift zone at the center of the mine, directly under the krivak's hook. You have no crane. You have no forklift. You have your torch in one hand, its smoke curling into your eyes. In your other hand, you have a heavy, iron-tipped wooden lever. You jam the lever under the block. You heave. Your feet slip in the brine. The block groans and slides 1 inch. You do it again. You do. It's just you, a lever and a tiny, flickering, rancid-smelling bubble of light, fighting against a Haften of salt, in an ocean of perfect, cold, eternal darkness. You're grunting, your feet slipping in the brine, your back screaming. The Haften block, your invoice, has moved maybe a foot. The torch in your other hand is dripping hot, sooty resin onto your wrist. This is impossible. You're not just a miner, you're a professional rock nudger, and you're failing. You're about to give up, to sit down on your impossible-to-move block and just weep in the dark. But then 2 other miners, their own work finished, trudge over. They don't offer to help you push, they don't even look at your lever. One of them is carrying a strange, A-frame-shaped thing made of wood, and the other is carrying a thick coil of rope. They've brought the vertelnitsa. This is the mainstream historical fact of the mine's forgotten machine. The krivak, the great horse engine above, is the mine's heart. But this is the muscle. It's a small, portable, hand-cranked wooden winch, a miniature windlass. It's essentially a krivakina box, designed to be set up by 2 men in 5 minutes. You watch them work. They set the sturdy wooden A-frame down on the salt floor, jamming its sharpened legs into shallow pockholes, so it won't slip. A small, sturdy wooden drum sits on an axle between the legs. They loop the rope once, twice, 3 times around the bucata, your salt block, and then run the other end to the winch's drum and take a few turns. One of the miners jams a long hardwood pole, a simple crank handle, into a socket on the side of the drum. He looks at you. He's offering you the honor. You put your torch in a wall sconce you hadn't even noticed, and you grab the handle. The other miner takes a handle on the opposite side. The foreman shouts, "Traje, pull." You both lean into it. At first, there's just resistance. The rope sings as it tightens, shedding drops of brine that hiss. You put your entire body weight into the crank. And then, the magic. The machine, with the beautiful, ancient power of the lever and the wheel and axle, multiplies your weak human effort. The Haften block, the one you couldn't budge with a lever, groans. It scrapes, and it begins to slide across the salt grit floor, a slow, majestic, and unstoppable journey. You are in awe. This simple wooden contraption is the mine's multi-tool. It's the solution to every problem that is too big for a man, but too small for the krivak. You've just used it as a come-along, a horizontal winch, to drag your product to the central depot. It's the 15th century equivalent of, "Did you try turning it off and on again?" Except here it's, "Did you try cranking it harder?" But as you work, you look over into a darker part of the mine. You see another Vartelnitsa set up. This one is positioned vertically, over a small, dark hole. A team is cranking it, lowering a man on a rope. He's an explorer, a prospector, being lowered into a test shaft to see if the salt quality is good. It's the R&D department. Historians and industrial archaeologists still debate the standardization of these crucial machines. Was every Vertelnitsa a unique artisanal piece, built by the mine's carpenter to his own whim, with parts that fit this machine and no other? Or was it a standardized design, a Mark II winch with interchangeable drums and A-frames, a piece of pre-industrial, mass-produced technology? The sad truth is, almost all of them are gone. Wood rots. Mines flood. The evidence has been dissolved, leaving us to guess at the true genius of their logistics. The quirky and most vital use of the Vartelnitsa becomes clear in a flash of bone-jarring terror. A man, working on a high wooden platform to clear a dangerous-looking overhang of salt, slips, You hear a shout, a clatter of tools, and a sickening thud. He's fallen maybe 5 meters into a deep, dark, slimy sump pit you hadn't even seen. A silence. Then a groan. Picioral. Picioral meu. My leg. He's alive, but his leg is twisted and he can't get out. The Krivac? Calling the Krivac is like calling 911 and having a 50-ton freight train show up. It's too big, too slow, and it's in the other shaft, busy hauling salt. The crew at the Vartelnitsa is there in seconds. They don't panic. They are a practiced team. They reposition their winch. They drop the end of their rope. The man in the pit, his face pale with pain, loops it under his arms. Sus! Up! You and the other miner turn the crank handles. It's not a fast, jerky lift. It's slow, smooth, and controlled. The machine doesn't care if it's lifting salt or a man, it just lifts. The miner is brought up, his face a mask of pain, and he's gently laid on the salt floor. He looks embarrassed, but mostly just salty. Sorry, I had to. You've just witnessed a 15th century emergency extraction. This simple wooden machine wasn't just about profit. It was the difference between a broken leg and a slow, cold, lonely death in the dark. Your block is now at the lift zone. The Vartelnitsa crew is already moving on, their machine on their shoulders, heading to the next local problem. You attach your block to the Krivac's main hook. You ring the signal bell. Ring. You hear the horses engage far above and your half-ton block is whisked away into the darkness. But you're now looking at a new problem. The miners have just split a truly massive block from the wall, one that must weigh 5 tons. It's not for export. It's for something in the mine. You see the foreman pointing not to the Krivac, but to a dark, steep, polished-looking ramp. That 5-ton block is a problem. Your Vartelnitsa, the trusty hand winch, is already being coiled up. It did its job, pulling the megalith free. But now what? It's far too large to be a bucata for export. The Krivac's hook can't even get a purchase, and the foreman isn't even looking at the main shaft. He's pointing down. You see, this conical mine isn't just one big room. As the miners dug deeper, they created a series of massive sloping terraces or steps, each one a new active work face, creating a vast, inverted subterranean ziggurat. This 5-ton block, cut from an upper level, is needed on the new level, 20 meters below. It's a structural component destined to become the base for a new ventilation furnace or a buttress for a stabilizing wall. You can't lift it. You can't drop it. It would shatter into a million useless pieces and punch a hole through the floor. So, how do you move 5 tons, 20 vertical meters, in a controlled descent, in the dark? You follow the foreman's pointing finger. At the edge of your terrace, where it drops off into a man-made cliff, is the toboggan, the slide. You're standing at the head of a massive, terrifying wooden ramp. This is the mainstream historical fact of internal mine transport. The toboggan desari, or salt slide. It's not a playground toy. It's a piece of brutalist, high-speed, heavy freight infrastructure. It consists of 2, sometimes 3, massive beech logs, their trunks as thick as your body laid parallel, running from your level down to the next. They are shored up by a heavy, complex timber frame, and the running surface, the top of the logs, has been planed and polished by the friction of 1,000 blocks before this one. It gleams, wet and treacherous, in your torchlight. This is the most dangerous job in the mine. You are on the launch crew. Your Vartelnitsa is rehooked, and you and the team drag the 5-ton block, inch by agonizing inch, to the very lip of the slide. This is the tipping point, the moment of no return. You can feel the sheer kinetic potential of the block, the 5 tons of gravity just waiting to be unleashed. The foreman, the basha, holds up a hand. He doesn't shout. He just waits. Then you see them, the grease boys. This is the quirky and counterintuitive part. 2 men, their tunics soaked, are running up the slide. They carry buckets, but they're not full of tallow or fat. That would get sticky and dangerously combustible with the friction. They are full of brine, the corrosive, icy-cold water from the sump pit. They slosh it all over the wooden rails. You're baffled. But the genius is clear. The saturated brine makes the wood incredibly, dangerously slick. It also acts as a coolant. preventing the wood from smoking and catching fire from the friction. The salt in the brine also helps preserve the wood from rot. They are lubricating their industrial slide with the mine's own toxic waste. It's a perfect, closed-loop piece of engineering. The foreman nods. "I'll come. Now." The vertelnica is unhooked. The men with the massive iron-tipped levers jam them under the block. Impinge, push, you all heave, your muscles screaming. The block teeters, it scrapes, and then it drops onto the slide with a thud that you feel in your teeth. For a heart-stopping second, it just sits there. Then it begins to move. Slowly at first, a deep, groaning creak. Then it catches. The roar that it produces is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's a high-pitched, deafening, tearing shriek of salt on wet wood, a sound that echoes off the conical walls and seems to fill the entire universe. It's moving fast now, a 5-ton white blur, throwing off a rooster tail of aerosolized brine spray that stings your face. You can imagine the gallows humor, watching it go. Well, Georga's block is on its way. Hope the catch crew is paying attention. Historians and mining engineers still debate the braking mechanisms for these terrifying contraptions. How did they stop the block at the bottom? Was it just a crude flat runoff area? Like an emergency truck ramp where the block just skidded to a halt on the salt grit floor? Or were there complex rope and pulley snubbing systems, a vertelnica at the bottom, working in reverse? You watch the block's journey. It hits the bottom, a perfectly angled ramp, and rockets onto the lower terrace floor, sliding for a full 30 meters before a cloud of salt dust signals its final, shuddering stop. It seems the runoff method was the standard, simple, brutal, and effective. You are in awe. The sheer, calculated violence of the procedure. The trust in the wood, the brine, the angles. The entire operation is a symphony of applied physics and raw courage. You look at the men around you, the launch crew. You look at the grease boys, already trudging back up for the next run. You look at the miners carving the blocks, the men at the krivak, the vertelnica team. Who are these men? Are they all the same? You're beginning to notice they're not. You see a man, his face a grimace of pain, but he keeps working. You see another man, his movements quick and professional. And you see another, his eyes dead and hopeless, his ankle chained to a heavy, rusted iron ring. You've just seen the machines. Now you're about to meet the workforce. You're right. That man's ankle, it's not a shadow. It's an iron shackle, thick and rusted, connected to a short, heavy chain. The links are worn smooth where they rub his raw, brine-soaked leather boot. He's an Oktnash, a convict. You're looking at the absolute lowest rung of this subterranean society. This is the mainstream historical fact that sits uncomfortably alongside the tales of engineering genius. These mines were also prisons. The tradition was ancient, a dark echo of the Roman damnati in Metallum. Local lords and later the Habsburg rulers found this to be a brilliant, cost-effective solution. Got a thief, a poacher, a brawler, a man who refused to pay his taxes? Don't just hang him. That's a waste of good labor. Sentence him to 10 years la okna at the mine. You watch him work. His movements are different from the other miners. They are slow, dull, heavy. His pickaxe is a crude, blunt instrument, probably mine property and not his own. He isn't carving a block, he's on the worst, most brutal, unskilled job. He's standing knee-deep in the sump pit, in the most corrosive, freezing brine, shoveling salt sludge and muck into a leather bucket. He doesn't get a sem. He doesn't get paid by the block. His payment is the chunk of hard, black bread he'll be thrown at the end of his 16-hour shift. He is human horsepower, a step below the blindfolded horses in the krivak above because the horses are valuable property that must be fed and watered. He is expendable. What did he do? You can't help but wonder. Maybe he stole a loaf of bread. Or maybe, in a fit of dark, cosmic irony, he was convicted of salt theft, trying to smuggle a small bag of the very substance that now encases his life. But then you look at the man next to him. This is the man you've been working with, the one with the tourniquet you admired. He's not chained. His clothes are worn, but they are his own. He moves with a quick, professional, almost angry efficiency. He's the one who carved his sign on the block. He is a Slatinik, a free miner. But Is he? You're seeing the other side of the labor coin. This man is a free villager from the Slatina, the salt land that surrounds the mine. He owns a small plot of land, but because he lives on salt land, he doesn't pay his taxes to the voivode, or the king, or the empire, in coin. He can't. He doesn't have any. He doesn't pay in grain. He pays in salt, or more precisely, he pays in labor. He is in a state of perpetual hereditary debt. He owes the state, say, 20 bucas de sar a year. To pay that, he has to come down here into this lethal, lightless world and carve them. But of course, the mine provides the tools for a fee, and the lift for a fee, and the candles for a fee. By the time his 20 blocks are cut, he's probably in debt for the supplies and has to cut 10 more just to break even. This is the grim reality. Historians and economic sociologists still debate the true freedom of these so-called free miners. Was this a choice? Or was it simply a more sophisticated, ledger-based form of serfdom? A man free to choose between working in the dark, suffocating, collapse-prone mine, or having his family's farm seized and being thrown in jail as an aknash, and ending up in the mine anyway. It's not much of a choice, it's just the illusion of one. You can't help but chuckle at the sheer brutalist efficiency of this HR department. It's perfect. Problem: we need miners. Solution 1. Force criminals to do it. Solution 2. Tax the local farmers so heavily and only accept payment in a form they can't get unless they work for us. It's diabolical. This creates the strange, deeply stratified social world of the pit. At the bottom, you have the aknash, the convict, the literal slave. He is spat on, given the worst, wettest, most dangerous jobs, and is worth nothing. One step above him is the slatinic, the free miner. He has pride. He has his own tools. He has skill. He's the man who knows how to read the salt, how to swing the pick, how to carve the block without shattering it. He looks down on the convict, but he looks up with a mix of awe and terror at the basha, the foreman, the krivikar, the blacksmith, the master carpenter. These are the specialists. They are the middle class, the true professionals. They are paid in coin. They are vital. The basha with his charcoal string is a manager, an engineer. The krivikar who greases the whim is the IT specialist. They can leave. They can take their rare, irreplaceable skills to another mine. They are, in this dark world, the elite. You can see the social ladder in action, and it's the world's most depressing promotion track. You start as a convict shoveling sludge. If you survive your sentence, you might be hired as a free miner now in permanent debt. If you show a genius for the work, you might one day become a basha. It's a path of sorts. You're standing in the middle of a complex, living, breathing society, one where a skilled tradesman is working shoulder to shoulder with a man in chains, who is working next to a man who is technically a free farmer. It's a mix of desperation, skill, and coercion, all held together by the common enemy of the dark and the common goal of the salt. And as you look at all of them, the convict, the free man, the foreman, you notice something strange they all have in common. Their skin, their lungs. You're looking at them. The convict, the free miner, the basha. And you're right, it's their skin. You look at the basha, the foreman. He must be 50 years old, a grandfather. His hair is gray, his movements are economical, his eyes are tired. But his face, his skin is tight, clear and almost absurdly unlined. He has the complexion of a man half his age. You look at the free miner, the piece worker. He's grimy with salt dust and sweat, but underneath it his skin is perfect. No boils, no acne, no infected pores. And the convict, the one standing in the corrosive, ulcer-inducing brine. His legs are a mass of weeping sore, but his arms, his face, flawless. This is the profound, disturbing, and utterly bizarre paradox of the salt mine. You are in one of the most dangerous, brutal, and psychologically crushing environments on Earth. It is a world of total darkness, crushing labor, and constant, lethal risk. And yet, in one very specific, modern way, it is the healthiest place you could possibly be. This is the mainstream historical fact that birthed a modern wellness industry. You are breathing perfect air. This is halotherapy. The air in this deep, stable salt deposit is almost perfectly sterile. It's too saline for bacteria to survive. It's too dry for mold or fungus. It's 100% free of pollen, dust, and all the surface world allergens. But it's more than that. The constant grinding, carving, and shattering of the salt blocks fills the air with a microfine, invisible aerosol of pure sodium chloride. You are breathing in a dry, salty mist. And this mist is a medicine. You're a coal miner? You get pneumoconiosis, black lung. The silica dust coats your lungs, turning them to a scarred, solid, useless rock. You will die coughing up black sludge. You're a salt miner? The salt aerosol you inhale is anti-inflammatory. It's a natural antiseptic. It thins mucus. It kills the bacteria that cause bronchitis and pneumonia. You can picture it. A new Aknash, a convict, is brought down from the dungeons, coughing up a storm, his lungs racked with prison fever. He's dead man walking. The Basha looks at him, rolls his eyes at the poor quality of the equipment and sends him to the sumpit. A month later, the Basha sees him. The man is still a prisoner, still miserable, still underfed. But his cough is gone, his lungs are clear, he breathes easier than the Lord in his drafty, moldy castle. You can't help but chuckle at the grim, dark joke. Welcome to the mine. The air is to die for, or rather not to. And then there's the pickling effect. This is the quirky and slightly grotesque tidbit. The salt in the air is a desiccant. It's curing you like a country ham. It's drawing the moisture from your skin, yes, but it's also creating an environment where the bacteria that cause skin infections simply cannot thrive. The miners, provided they aren't standing 24/7 in the liquid brine, have skin like newborn babies. Their cuts, as long as they're not on their feet, heal with astonishing infection-free speed. You can imagine a miner bragging in the village tavern. My wife says my hands are rough as stone, but my face is as smooth as a prince's. Historians and medical anthropologists still argue over whether this was a recognized phenomenon at the time, or just a modern romanticization. Did they know it was healthy? It's highly unlikely they conceptualized it that way. The health benefits of breathing sterile air were probably massively outweighed by the getting crushed by a 5-ton block of salt drawback. The life expectancy in this job was not high, but you died of trauma, not disease. You didn't waste away from a lung infection. You died right now in a sudden, violent, and unambiguous workplace accident. It was a different, more immediate kind of mortality. A morbid, fringe thought floats into your head. If a man did die in a collapse, in a dry, sealed part of the mine, he wouldn't just be a skeleton for future archaeologists. The salt would stop the bacteria. The dry air would desiccate his flesh. He would be mummified. He'd be perfectly preserved, a salt-cured ghost, his skin, his hair, his very surprised expression, locked in time. A permanent, silent employee. You look at the Basha, the foreman, with his healthy skin and clear lungs. He's not just a miner, he is the manager. He's the one who runs the payroll, the one who counts the blocks. He's the one who knows who signed which block. He is the master of this subterranean domain. And you're about to find out that his job isn't just about geology and engineering. It's about power. You're looking at this man, the Basha. He with his clear skin, his sharp eyes, and his air of absolute, unquestioned authority. He isn't just a foreman. He's a baron. This vast, dark, sloping cathedral of salt? This is his fiefdom. He's not just managing the miners, he owns this part of the operation, body and soul. This is the mainstream historical fact of the later, more organized mining system. The Basha was often a contractor, an entrepreneur. The distant, aristocratic mine owner, the Hungarian king, the Transylvanian voivode, or later the Habsburg imperial treasury, was not in the business of managing 100-meter-deep holes in the ground. That was messy. They were in the business of revenue. So they leased the mine not as a whole, but in sections. This conical chamber, this camera di sare, was the Basha's concession. He signed a contract, written in Latin or Hungarian on a piece of expensive parchment, a document that probably never saw the light of the mine itself. That contract was simple. You, Basha Ionescu, will deliver 5,000 bucăți de sar of standard size and quality to the base of the imperial Krivac by the feast of St. Andrew. In exchange, the imperial treasury will pay you X florins. And with that, The aristocrat washed his hands of it. How the Basha got those 5,000 blocks. That was his problem. And his opportunity. The free miners? They don't work for the king. They work for the Basha. He's the one who hires them, the one who haggles with them over their piecework rate. He's the one who signs off on their SEM, their signature on the blocks, and pays them from his own pocket. He's not just a supervisor. He's a small business owner, a CEO, and an HR department of one, operating in the most hostile environment on Earth. This is where his absolute power comes from. Historians and economic archivists still debate the true nature of this internal economy. The Krivak, the Great Horse Engine, was state property, the central infrastructure. But all the local gear, the Vartelnitsa hand winches, the coils of rope, the tallow for the candles, the iron for the pickheads, that was all part of the Basha's business expenses. He had to procure it. He had to pay the blacksmith for repairs, the rope maker for new lines, the carpenter for new platforms. He was a manager, a quartermaster, and a supply chain expert, all while ensuring his workforce didn't collapse or get crushed. This is where the barren part comes in. This is the quirky and deeply corrupt tidbit. The Basha has a quota, 5,000 blocks. But his crew, this mix of skilled but indebted Slatanisi and brutalized Aknashi, convicts, is good. They are fast. They are efficient. What if they don't produce 5,000 blocks? What if in that same time frame they produce 5,500? The 5,000 go up the Imperial Krivak. The Basha gets his check. But what about the other 500? Those are the extra. Those are the off-the-books blocks. You can see the Basha in his Saltnook office, his ledger open. He's not just a contractor, he's a racketeer. Those 500 extra blocks are his real profit. He sells them, not to the state but on the gray market. He sells them to a local merchant who forgets to pay the imperial salt tax. He pays his best miners with them, a form of tax-free bonus that keeps them loyal to him, not to the state. You cut 30 blocks this week, Vasile. The state says you cut 25. Here are 5 for your daughter's dowry. We are friends, yes? He's a gang boss. He's a godfather. He's the only man in this entire system who is, in a way, truly free. And the Aknashi, the convicts, they are the dark foundation of his profit margin. The state leases them to him for a pittance, just the cost of their black bread rations. They are his free labor. Every block they cut under the lash of his trusted enforcers is almost 100% profit. He has every incentive to work them to death, and he probably does. You can see the dark triangle of this society. The convict fears the Basha. The free miner respects and depends on the Basha. And the state, far away, trusts the Basha to get the job done. He is the linchpin. He is the man who turns this subterranean chaos, this world of darkness, brine, and pain, into a neat, tidy, and profitable number on a surface world ledger. You've just attached your last block to the Krivak's hook. You ring the bell. You hear the horses groan 100 meters above you. The block, your invoice, disappears into the darkness, rising towards the light. You've seen the whole operation from the first pickaxe strike to the foreman's corrupt ledger. The journey down here is over. But for the salt, the journey has just begun. Your block is gone. It has ascended into the world above. You follow it, climbing a series of slimy, near-vertical wooden ladders in the ventilation shaft, a journey that feels even more dangerous than the work itself. You emerge, blinking, into the sunlight. The sudden violent brightness is a physical blow. Your eyes, accustomed to the dim, flickering orange of a tallow candle, are in agony. You're blind. You collapse, covering your face, and it takes a full 5 minutes for the world to resolve into shapes. It's not a quiet, pastoral forest clearing. You are standing in the middle of a muddy, noisy, and shockingly industrial complex. The air, which you expected to be sweet and fresh, is a foul, overpowering mix. It's the acrid smell of the focar de aérage, the ventilation furnace which is chuffing out a constant, lazy column of wood smoke. It's the smell of dung. Dozens of horses for the Krivak and teams of massive gray oxen for the carts are stalled nearby, their animal heat steaming in the cool air. And underneath it all is the sharp, sterile, familiar tang of the salt. which seems to coat everything. You are standing at the mouth of the mine, the Gura Okni. This is the topside operation, the logistics hub. The Great Krivac is housed in its own massive, octagonal, barn-like building, the horses plotting their blindfolded, endless circle inside. Your block, now in the real world, is unhooked. But it doesn't just get thrown on a pile. This is where the real money is. You see a new man. He doesn't look like a miner. He wears a clean, dark tunic. He has spectacles. And he's holding a wax tablet. This is the Tenekar, the administrator. He is the state. He's not paid by the Basha. He's the auditor. He's the one who checks the Basha's math. He inspects your block. He has a marked stick checking its dimensions. This one is short, he mutters, making a note. The Basha's on-surface representative, a burly man with a ledger, starts arguing immediately. You are witnessing the moment of accounting, the place where the subterranean, piecework gang boss economy of the Basha crashes into the cold, hard, imperial economy of the state. This is the mainstream historical fact. The salt trade was a regal or imperial monopoly. From the earliest Hungarian kings to the later Habsburg emperors, the state didn't just tax salt, the state owned it. It was illegal for you to just dig your own salt. It was illegal to sell your own salt. You could only sell it to the state at a price the state fixed, and the state then sold it to the rest of the world for a massive, non-negotiable markup. This monopoly made white gold a tool of statecraft. Historians and economists still debate the true, long-term impact of this monopoly. Did this guaranteed, state-controlled revenue fund the wars against the Ottoman Empire, effectively saving the region? Or did this lack of competition, this fixed-price system, utterly stifle innovation for centuries? Why invent a better Krivac when you get paid the same either way? Your block, after a heated argument, is accepted. It's slid on massive wooden rollers into the Magazie de Sar, the salt warehouse. You peek inside. It's a dark, cavernous, cathedral-like barn, filled with thousands, maybe tens of thousands of salt blocks, all stacked in neat, geometric, glittering rows. The air inside is so dry, so sterile, it stings. This is the regional bank. This is the treasury. Now, the journey out. You watch a team load the blocks onto the transport. It's the Kharkiv boy, the classic solid-wheeled ox cart. The wheels are just massive, thick slices of a single giant tree trunk. They look prehistoric, but they are strong. Pulled by a team of 4, 6, even 8 massive, slow-plodding oxen, these carts can move tons. Why oxen? A horse is fast, but it's high-strung, needs expensive grain, and its legs are fragile. An ox is a slow, cheap, all-terrain tractor. It just eats grass and it will pull and pull and pull until it drops. The cart lurches, its wooden axles screaming. They're not greased. The sound is supposed to scare away evil spirits or maybe just wolves. And it joins the convoy. This is the Drumul Sari, the salt road. It's not a road. It's a 100-meter wide scar of mud and ruts, a highway of pure misery. This convoy will trudge at 2 miles an hour for a week to reach the river. There, at a fortified port, the salt is loaded onto massive, flat-bottomed river barges, often just gigantic rafts. These plute will be floated down the Murish to the Danube, and from there, to the world. This is the quirky, vital fact. The salt block is the currency. In a world of debased silver coins where a king might clip his coins or mix them with lead, a block of salt was pure. It had intrinsic, life-saving value. You couldn't be tricked. You couldn't eat a florin. You couldn't preserve your winter's pork with a ducat. This block of salt, carved by a man in debt, hauled by a convict, accounted for by a clerk, and shipped by an ox, was more stable, more trusted, and more valuable than the gold in the king's treasury. This medieval, chaotic, horse and ox-powered system is at its absolute peak. And it is about to be shattered. You hear in the local tavern new, sharp, clipped accents. Men speaking German, carrying rolled-up maps, looking for the Basha. The Austrians have arrived. You're standing by the salt warehouse watching the ox carts being loaded. The Tenekar, the imperial auditor, is arguing with the Basha's representative. It's all so familiar, so medieval. It's muddy, chaotic, and it runs on a system of shouts, curses, and well-worn grooves of corruption. Then you see them. 3 men, riding up the Drumul Sari on fine horses. not plodding draft animals. They aren't soldiers, but they wear crisp, dark, military-style wool coats with silver buttons. They aren't Beishi. Their faces are clean-shaven, and their hands are soft, unmarked by the pick or the lever. They dismount, and you see what they carry. Not pickaxes, but tripod-mounted telescopes. Not ledgers, but leather satchels full of pencils, calipers, and brass and glass instruments you don't even have a name for. They unroll a document on a portable table. It's not a lease agreement. It's a map, a blowpause, a blueprint. This is the mainstream historical fact, the arrival of the Habsburg ingenieur. This is the great reorganization of the 18th century. The medieval, semi-feudal Wild West era of the salt barons is over. The mine is being nationalized, rationalized, and modernized. The men from Vienna have arrived, and they are here to replace a system of tradition with a system of Rechnung, calculation. The chief engineer, a stern man with spectacles, is looking at the Krivak with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. This thing, he says in sharp, precise German, it runs on grass. You cannot calculate grass. He is appalled by the chaos. He's appalled by the free miners and their signs, by the Basha's off-the-books racket, by the single massive, irrational conical chamber. To him, this mine isn't a marvel, it's a mess. He unfurls his map. It is a work of art. It's a precise, scaled cross-section of the entire salt dome, showing the existing conical mine as a tiny, unplanned void within a new proposed grid of perfect, geometric shapes. The age of the Basha is over. He's demoted. He is now a Steiger, a salaried shift supervisor, his power to run a gray market annihilated overnight. The free miners are no longer piecework contractors. They are now wage laborers, their pay fixed, their hours recorded. The Aknashi, the convicts, are still convicts, but now they are rationalized, their labor part of a precise industrial calculation, not just a source of free profit for a middleman. The era of personality is gone. The era of the spreadsheet has begun, even if it's written with a quill. The engineer's new plan is radical. They look at the single massive conical void and shake their heads. Unsafe, wasteful. Look at all this salt you are leaving in the walls. Their new design, based on mathematics and structural mechanics, is a return to an old familiar shape, but with a crucial calculated twist. They propose a new bell-shaped or trapezoidal profile mine, but this time it's not a single chamber. It's a series of them, all perfectly parallel, like the teeth of a giant comb. They are dug in a perfect line, separated by massive, meticulously calculated pillars of salt, left untouched to support the colossal weight of the mountain. The mine is no longer a cathedral. It has become a grid, a cold, underground, rational city plan. Historians and mining engineers still debate whether this new rational Austrian design was truly superior to the old, chaotic medieval cone. The new grid system was far more productive. You could extract more salt, faster from more work faces, but it had a hidden, long-term flaw. Those pillars, left to hold up the world, were still made of salt. And as you learned, salt creeps. Under the strain, over decades, those pillars would begin to flow, to buckle, to slowly, imperceptibly fail. The old conical mine, which had turned the mountain's weight against itself, was stable forever. The new rational grid? It had an expiration date, calculated by a generation of engineers who would be long dead before their pillars began to groan. This brings you to the quirky linguistic side of this revolution. The Basha is gone. The Vertelnitsa is now a haspel. The Okna is a Kammer. The Basha's office is now the Steigerstube. The entire language of the mine, the old, organic, Romanian and Slavic terms, are being papered over with the cold, precise, technical vocabulary of German engineering. The Austrians bring order. They bring maps, they bring calculation. They are bringing the full, logical, beautiful, and terrifying force of the Enlightenment into this dark, medieval world. And they have one more new rational trick up their sleeve. The engineer walks you to a new test gallery. The Turnakop, he says, tapping your pickaxe with his ruler is too slow. A man's arm is inefficient. He points to a small dark hole, drilled deep into the salt wall. A man is tamping something, a dark powder, into the hole. This, the engineer says with a small, proud smile, is true progress. You've never heard a sound like it. It's not the crack of a wedge. It's a deep, muffled thump. You're in that test gallery, and the engineer is beaming with pride. That deep, muffled thump was the sound of his progress, the sound of calculation, the sound of the 18th century, arriving with a bang. You move into the main, newly cut, rational chamber, a perfect grid-like room supported by massive square pillars. The era of the Turnicop, the artful hand-carved piecework of the Slatinic, is over. The new king of the mine isn't the man with the strongest arm. He's the man with the steadiest hand. He is the Sprengmeister, the blasting master. You watch him. He and his team, the new elite, don't carry picks. They carry a Sfradel, a massive thandled hand-auger, a giant gimlet. They press it against the salt face, and two men, their muscles bunched, begin to turn. It's a slow, agonizing, screeching process, as the auger drills a deep, perfectly cylindrical, 2-inch-wide hole, angled just so, into the wall. This is the mainstream historical fact of the gunpowder revolution. It replaced the art of carving with the science of drilling. The hole's angle, its depth, its placement, this is all calculated by the engineer to use the minimum powder for the maximum effect. The Sprengmeister, a man whose hands are eerily clean, now takes over. He carefully pours a measured charge of coarse, black powder from a horn flask into the hole. He tamps it down with a wooden rod, his movements slow, deliberate. A single spark from a metal rod would vaporize him. He inserts a long, thin, slow-burning fuse, just a piece of tarred hemp cord. Then, he tamps the hole closed with wet, sticky clay, creating a plug. He's just built a small, subterranean cannon. He's not trying to carve the salt. He's trying to shock it. He nods. A new, terrifying shout echoes through the grid-like halls. Fuck! Feuer! Fire! The word itself seems to panic the miners. They don't just step back. They scramble. They run, their boots slipping to hide behind the massive, calculated salt pillars, pressing their bodies against the cold crystal. The Sprengmeister, his job done, is already gone, having lit the sputtering fuse. You cower with the miners. You wait. The silence is profound, broken only by the hiss of the fuse. The explosion is a physical blow. It is not the crack of a wedge. It is a deep, earth-shaking, chest-imploding boom. The air itself compresses, punching you in the chest so hard it forces the breath from your lungs. The sound is the real weapon. In the open air, it would be a bang. Here, in these perfect crystalline sound-conducting chambers, the sound wave has nowhere to go. It doesn't just echo, it multiplies. It hits the wall, bounces, joins the next reflection, and builds into a compound roar, a physical, vibrating, overwhelming force that you feel in your teeth, your bones, your skull. It is the loudest, most violent, and most terrifying thing you have ever experienced. And the smoke. Before the echo has even died, a thick, acrid, choking cloud of sulfurous yellow-gray poison billows out from the blast site. It fills the chamber instantly, a hot chemical fog that smells of brimstone and struck matches. Your eyes burn. Your lungs seize. You are not just breathing smoke. You are breathing the toxic byproducts of a chemical reaction. Nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide. The ventilation system, that brilliant fire-powered lung, is now in a desperate, losing battle to clear an atmosphere that is actively trying to kill you. Historians and mining technologists still argue over this moment. The Austrian engineer, safe in his office, saw only the the smoke clears, after an hour, and the miners return. Where a dozen men would have labored for a full day to carve and split a tenton section, the blast has done it in 1 second. A mountain of shattered, fractured salt lies on the floor, ready to be broken into bouquets and hauled away. The mine's output has just increased 100-fold. But the old demoted Basha, he sees the Khan. He's standing by the pillar, the very one you were hiding behind. He runs his hand, not over the blast site, but over the safe pillar. He's feeling for microfractures. He knows in his bones what the engineer's slide rule hasn't calculated. The shockwave didn't just stop at the blast, it traveled. It ran through the entire mountain, a seismic event. With every boom, the Austrians are invisibly, progressively shattering the very pillars holding up their rational, modern mind. They are trading short-term, massive profit for long-term, catastrophic and completely incalculable failure. The quirky human side effect? The Sprengmeister is the new high-status man and the most hated. He's paid a fortune. He's part alchemist, part magician, but he's also the man who makes your ears bleed, the man who fills your lungs with poison. You can imagine the old pick miners, their ears ringing, that bastard with his Prof Negru. He thinks he's a god. He's just a lazy man with a loud stick. The era of the craftsman is dead. The age of brute chemical force has begun. And the old mine, the beautiful, stable, hand-carved conical cathedral you just left, it is now, officially, obsolete. The echo of the boom is still rattling in your skull. The air in the new, rational Austrian Kammer is a yellow, toxic fog. Your lungs burn. This is progress, but it feels like a chemical war. The engineer, his map now slightly smudged with sulfur, is already planning the next set of charges, but you're not needed here. You're just a pair of hands, and the gunpowder is the new star. You see an old, dark hole in the side of this new, precise, grid-like chamber. It's a breach, a place where the new miners accidentally punched through into the past. A cold, clean, silent draft is puffing out of it. Curious, you pick up your torch, and you step through. The world changes, the noise stops. The sulfur stench is gone. The low, cramped, squared-off ceiling of the Austrian Kammer vanishes, and you step out into a void. The floor drops away, and you are on a narrow, sloping ledge. You hold your torch high, and the flame, no longer choked by powder smoke, roars to life, a tiny, brave orange spark in an ocean of impossible, silent, velvety black. You have just stepped back in time. You are standing near the top of the old, obsolete, medieval conical mine. You are standing in a cathedral, a silent, forgotten, subterranean god space. The scale is an assault on your senses. Your torch bubble, which felt so small in the narrow tunnels, is now comically, uselessly tiny. The beam of light just dies. It fades into a darkness so profound, so absolute, it feels like a physical thing. You can't see the ceiling. You can't see the floor, 100 meters below. You can't see the other side. You are a fly, clinging to the wall of a giant's bottle. The silence is the loudest thing you've ever heard. It's not just quiet. It's the absence of sound, a vacuum that presses on your eardrums. You edge your way down a crumbling, hand-cut staircase, a spiral path carved into the wall itself. You reach a wider terrace, and you walk to the wall. This is the mainstream historical fact. This is the testament. You run your hand over it. It's not the shattered, fractured, brutalized mess of the gunpowder blast. This wall is art. It's a tapestry of tool marks. You see the faint, black, snapped charcoal lines of the Basha's grid. You see the shing slices of the Turnakop's adze blade. You see the perfect hand-carved sem, the cross, of a miner, his invoice on a block that was never hauled away. This is a library written in the language of human labor, and it is stable. This is the genius. This mine, abandoned for 50, maybe 100 years, has not moved. The conical shape, that primitive design the Austrians scoffed at, has done its job perfectly. It has redirected the stress of the mountain, holding millions of tons of earth at bay with no pillars, no iron, no thumping gunpowder shocks. It is a masterpiece of pre-literate physics, a testament to builders who felt the weight of the world and knew in their bones how to defy it. Historians and preservationists still argue about these vast, obsolete chambers. Were they just sealed and forgotten? Or, as some records hint, were they actively repurposed? A room this vast, this dry, and this stable is a perfect warehouse. You can imagine the Austrian quartermasters thrilled. A place to store 10,000 barrels of gunpowder, 50,000 sacks of grain, all perfectly preserved, safe from rats, rot, and enemy cannon fire. And the air, this is the quirky, magical part. You take a deep breath. It is the purest, coldest, cleanest air you have ever tasted. It's the vintage halotherapy air, sterile and perfect. And it's moving. A slow, faint, ghostly sigh is brushing past your cheek. The old ventilation system, that U-tube with its parallel shafts, is still working. The ventilation furnace has been cold for a century, but the simple natural temperature and pressure difference between the two shafts, the thermosiphon, still pulls a steady, quiet breath through this vast, dead space. The mine is still alive. It's breathing. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the air. You feel watched. You're not just in a room. You're in a memory. You see the small salt niche where a Vartelnitsa frame was jammed, the wood now gone, just the pockmarks remaining. You see the dark, rust-colored stain of a sweet water leak that was, for a generation, a source of panic, now just a dry, mineral smear. You're standing in a silent monument, not to a king or a god, but to the Basha, the Slatinik, and the Oknash. You're in a place of such profound, strange, and intimidating beauty, a beauty born of pure, brutal function. You can't help but think, this is too incredible to be forgotten. This isn't a mine anymore. It's a wonder of the world. You're standing in that vast, silent, conical void, the old medieval mine, and the air is breathing. It's a ghost. It's a memory. But then you hear a new sound. It's not the creak of the Kryvak. It's not the thump of gunpowder or the clink of a pick. It's a smooth, high-pitched electric whir, and you see a new light, not the flickering, sooty orange of a tallow candle, but a bright, cold, steady beam of blue-white LED. It's coming from below. You look over the edge of the terrace you're on, and the abyss isn't an abyss. It's illuminated, and you see it. The whir is a glass elevator, a transparent capsule, gliding effortlessly down a track bolted to the ancient, salt-carved wall. You have stepped out of the past and into the afterlife. You are in Salina Turda, and it is glorious. This is the mainstream historical fact that completes our journey. These ancient mines, abandoned when the gunpowder and the grid systems made them obsolete, were not sealed and forgotten. They have been reborn. They are now one of the most stunning tourist attractions in the world, a subterranean theme park, a high-tech halotherapy center, and a historical monument, all in one. The one thing that was just a bizarre fringe side effect for the miners, the clean, sterile, medicinal air, is now the central product. You see them, tourists sitting in modern deck chairs at the bottom, 120 meters down, just breathing. They are paying for the privilege of inhaling the same air that the Oknash was forced to breathe, the same air that pickled the Basha. You get in that elevator. As you descend, the scale hits you in a way the darkness never allowed. You can see the whole chamber, the Camera Rudolph, the Rudolph mine. It is 13 stories deep, it is 50 meters wide, and the walls, my God, the walls. Now that they are lit, you see that they are not smooth. They are a tapestry. They are a 13-story tall library of labor, a vertical record of every Turnakop strike, every sem carved by a hopeful peace worker, every charcoal line snapped by a Basha. The spiral, hand-cut staircase, the one you just stumbled down in the dark, is still there, now a beautifully preserved wooden walkway that clings to the wall. You see the art in their primitive engineering. The elevator stops. The doors hiss open. You are at the bottom. And the sheer, joyous, beautiful absurdity of it all hits you. This is the quirky, surreal tidbit. You are standing 120 meters underground, in a 13th century salt mine, on a floor that was once a sumpit of freezing, corrosive brine. And in front of you is a panorad, a glowing, neon-lit 20-meter tall Ferris wheel. You can ride it. To your left is a small, wooden, beautifully constructed amphitheater. The acoustics, which once multiplied the boom of gunpowder into a terrifying weapon, are now so perfect they host classical concerts. You can hear a pin drop. Over there is a mini golf course, a bowling alley. You can play sports in the bottom of a mine that once broke men in half. You walk through a new horizontal tunnel, one cut by modern machines, not by picks. You enter the Camera Teresia, one of the original failed bell pits. The one that couldn't be drained, the one that drowned. The water is still there, but now it's a magnificent dark underground lake. The water is crystal clear and perfectly ethereally still. In the center is a small island, a saltis land, built from the mine's own refuse. And you can rent a rowboat. You can take a date and you can paddle in the quiet, your oars the only sound, in a place where men once formed a human chain, passing leaking leather buckets, dying of exhaustion in a futile war against the very water you're now floating on. The irony is breathtaking, and this is the heart of the modern question. Preservationists and historians still debate this. Is this a brilliant, perfect example of adaptive reuse? A way to save this priceless, unique piece of industrial heritage by making it a profitable, self-sustaining attraction? Or is it Disneylandification? Is it a grotesque, disrespectful theme park that completely erases the memory of the suffering, the slavery, the Oknashi in their chains, the Slatanichi in their debt? Does the tourist laughing on the Ferris wheel have any concept of the man who died right here, when the bell pit collapsed? Does it matter? You look up. You look at the walls, the art, the sheer genius of that first conical primitive design. The Austrians, with their gunpowder, are gone. Their rational minds are, in many cases, collapsing, their pillars failing. But this mine, this medieval cathedral, it remains. It is so perfect, so stable, so brilliantly engineered by men who had no blueprints that 800 years later, we can bolt a Ferris wheel, an elevator, and a bowling alley to it. And it doesn't even flinch. Maybe that is the real monument, the ultimate final proof of their genius. And so, you leave the lights of the subterranean Ferris wheel behind. You ascend in the glass elevator, rising past the beautifully lit tapestries of 1,000 forgotten shifts. Up, up, out of the salt, out of the darkness, and back into the world you know. The journey is over. The thump of the gunpowder is silent. The groaning wooden heartbeat of the Krivak is still. The faint charcoal sem of the miner, his invoice for a life's work, has been paid, if only in our memory tonight. The story of the Transylvanian salt, of the white gold, is the story of human ingenuity pressed to its absolute limit. A story told in the language of physics and pain, of brute force and breathtaking art. It is the story of how we, when faced with an impossible task, to light the dark, to breathe the unbreathable, to move the unmovable, find a way. Those vast, silent, conical cathedrals are still there, deep beneath the forests. They are still breathing, their slow, cold, salty breath a testament to the anonymous genius that carved them. The miner's work is finally done. Their story for tonight has been told. And now, as the echoes of their picks fade away, you can find your own rest. The lights are dim, the air is still, and you can just let go.